Everybody. This is Carlo with Four Guys with Quarters, and today we are interviewing Jim.
Hejl.
Uh, that's right, Jim Hejl.
Yep,
Dreadpool could
that's
probably
perfect.
pronounce it better than me. And on the panel today, I have Dreadpool and Mav with me as well, and we're gonna go ahead and to get into some topics. And Jim, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Yeah. First, I've been in gaming forever. So I went from, computer science major to getting an internship with Electronic Arts. And so I actually flew out to the Bay Area to do an internship. And I wanted to work on Madden really bad back then. And they were like, well, we do college basketball here. So I became an intern on March Madness 99 PlayStation. And then I went from that. I was imagining to go back, to school after that. And at the end of my internship, they said, do you want to just fly to Tiburon and talk to those dudes about Madden? And I was, yeah, I mean, I can't hurt. And that interview went really well. And they made me an offer. And so I was like, okay, this is like all I ever wanted to do, really, was like work on a title like Madden. And they were making me an offer. So it was like, well, I either take it or I don't. And so I did, and moved to Florida, left school, and I've been kind of with EA in different capacities ever since then. Like I've moved around in the organization. I've moved around to different studios. I lived in Vancouver for 3 years. I went back to Florida. Then I came to Austin. So I'm right now where, BioWare has a presence, and we have, a good sized studio here. And so I work in right now applied research and development in the kind of art part of our organization. And so, obviously there's development and all the engine stuff that happens. And I worked there for a very long time. Then there's this really giant tree that is everything related to art, visual effects, modeling, animation, rigging, capture. There's just like so many families in there. And work in that organization now. So I report to a VP. We have an internal brand name for it called EA Create. That's the name of the art part of the organization that I live in. And then there's the, whole production side of gaming, which I have not worked in. Producer, executive producer, design, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
You
And
mentioned.
the art organization is kind of big enough to where it would not only have its own engineering, internal to it, but it actually has kind of what I do, which is really future looking engineering work. So applied research. There's no like exact place to put applied research. And this is true in any tech company, not just video games. It's like, well, where do we put applied research? Well, you put it wherever it's currently kind of needed. That's where it goes, And so when it's needed on engine development, it goes there. When it's needed on, for example, there's other applied research happening around AI at EA right now. And so it goes there. That's not what I do. And then there's just kind of like the next generation of what it means to build video game art. And that has its own kind of applied research view. And that's the place I contribute.
So, have you worked on any specific games, or is it pretty much just the
Yeah, at the beginning.
engines in the
Yeah.
beginning?
So
Just
no. At the beginning, I went from intern on March Madness to just software engineer one. That's kind of like how a lot of people enter any kind of tech company. The first they're numbered, right? And so I was just software engineer one, assigned to Madden 2000 PlayStation One. That's the team that I was on. And so I was just, physically just a guy assigned to Madden. And then I switched to PC, Madden PC. I think PlayStation might have been 2 years, like 2000, 2001. And then 2002, 3, and 4, I think I was working on PC. I was the lead platform engineer for PC, and that has its own challenges. And then before what guys know is like the Xbox 360 and the PS3 came out, I went back to doing engine development at Tiburon, so back to Florida, and did like engine stuff for a good number of years there, leading all into that generation 4, console 3, I guess, and 4. So console years 3 and 4, generations 3 and 4, I worked on engine stuff, and then kind of left to this opportunity that was in Vancouver, called EA Worldwide Studios. And so it was this kind of formalized way to do R&D type stuff. And they pulled people from film. There was a guy that worked on like the Matrix, and like, you remember the bullet cam, on the original Matrix stuff. People that had worked on those shots and stuff were EA Worldwide. And so really, really kind of interesting group of people up there. Big organized applied research like that doesn't tend to work out like really well in the end. Applied research ends up being more of kind of like a little best as little tactical teams that kind of form and then dissolve, however appropriate. And so that lasted like 3 years. And then as it was shutting down, my work permit to work in Canada was kind of also ending. So I was just like, I'm going to go back to Tiburon. And so after the Vancouver thing, I went back to Tiburon, but I've never left. I worked in a new IP group when I went back to Tiburon, and that does what you think it would do. And then I kind of joined the Frostbite organization, and I did a lot of performance side engine work, not really working on the engine itself, working on how to make the games work well on the engine. So run fast. And then kind of officially just entered applied research, and I've been there to today.
Okay. What's a typical day like in applied research?
Yeah, it depends a lot on the team that we're engaged with. So in applied research, you don't want to be providing kind of solutions in search of a problem. That's like a really common thing, is to kind of like pick something out of like the tech landscape and be like, okay, this like very specific machine learning thing, how can we apply that to all the stuff that, exists in gaming? That's not the way we look at things. We look at, what does FIFA need, or what does, some game team need? And then is there some interesting kind of way to look at this problem? Is there some kind of new tech or new thing or new imaging technology, it just goes on and on and on. Is there something that could really make a difference here? And we look at that. We look at like, could this new thing provide a really big kind of jump? And so that's kind of the world we live in. And what we would be looking at really depends on who our partner team is right then. So if I could walk you through like our last 3, engagements or whatever, they look very different. And that's because we will kind of unattach from one team and reattach to another team clear across the organization. And that's a privilege of what I get to do, is that while what we do is very focused and very narrow, we can reach all the way across the org. And so, from where I am, I can hit any studio, any team. And so it depends on, kind of where we're deployed. But generally, it looks like what you would expect game dev to look like. We go to work at the studio. We work kind of in the same building as WWCE, which is our consumer experience people. BioWare, Sports Mobile has a big presence here. Red Crow, The Simpsons. There's a lot of teams there, and we have our own area. And we work in the lab on secret stuff.
That's awesome. I gotta say, like, working on secret stuff has to be fun, and I know
Yeah,
it's
it's cool.
something you can't talk about, but that's got to be a lot of fun, man. Coming home at the end
Oh,
of
you
the
can't
day.
talk about any of it.
Yeah.
If you had anyone out from BioWare or from anywhere else, it's like they can't talk about what they're currently doing. The difference with me is I can't really tell you about anything I've done.
How hard is it to have, let's say you have a friend that would just absolutely love that piece of information, but you can't share it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That used to be kind of a harder issue for me at the beginning of my career, because you like go to work and you're exposed to all these things that you personally experience as like really exciting. It's like, oh my God, that's all the stuff that everybody wants to know, kind of thing. And that is the experience of going to work anywhere in entertainment. You get this incredibly privileged in behind the curtain view at everything. And if that's your bag, if you want to see behind the curtain, all of a sudden it's right there. And I don't want this to sound jaded in any way, but after you've been doing that for a couple of years, those things are not new to you anymore, like to you specifically. It's like, it would be like, how excited are you to tell somebody about, a console that you're 3 years into now?
Right.
It's like, if somebody just didn't know about it, it's just like, let's talk about the one that's coming or something else, like anything other than the one that I've been exposed to for like 3 years. And so occasionally, like one little thing will pop up. Like the Skate example, the fact that, we were going to say something about working on the Skate franchise again. That was actually one that I was just like, oh my gosh, I wish I could tell some other people about that, so it happens. But really, really used to, just flipping the switch. And, it's like when you leave that world, kind of everything closes. And it's just something you get really used to, is that you're either kind of in the game development world or the switch gets thrown and you're outside of it, and that gets more complicated when you're talking to people that are really interested in it. But don't worry, I'm good at it. I know what parts I can tell you.
Yeah, it's funny how you could be working on something for so many years and still know who you want to tell, but yet you can't tell them, but yet it just goes in the back of your mind. You don't even think about it anymore. You're just like, yeah, I know that they're gonna jump for joy and hug me and kiss me and everything because I'm going to tell them something, but it's 3 years in the making. It's not even ready for anything, even as an announcement.
Yeah, so a lot of times, like I can do the older things get, the more I feel kind of comfortable, describing them to you. Like what you would have seen in like the PlayStation 2 era is not a console, but this rack mounted thing that looks like, you're about to do a audio kind of performance or something, like amps are kind of lined up in a rack. It was a rack mounted thing. And there was no kind of like console to look at all. And we even had to like kind of wire up a way that we could share the one example controller that they gave us, because people need that on their desk. And so, like really early on a project like that, even internally, it doesn't exactly look like exciting. It just looks like a really hard engineering problem. And then kind of as it progresses and you start to see the entertainment that's coming out of it, it's like, wow, that's impressive. Like, especially on the PlayStation 2, that did not look like the PlayStation 1, like at all. And so being able to be there for kind of the first years of Madden on PlayStation 2, that was really exciting to watch develop. It's like seeing it go from like these weird little lo-fi, kind of just a skeleton rendering on a grid and stuff like that. And then all the way up to really good looking assets was really fun. And that part of the job, getting the art, up onto the screen, is never stops being really cool. Never stops being really interesting.
Now, you bring up PlayStation 2, and some of us are Xbox fans. So there was a time that Madden came out, and I don't know if it's because it was something that we saw in our eyes, but it looked like the PlayStation 2 had, a pretty good, decent graphics, for the engine that you guys had. And then when it got ported to the Xbox, it was a port, and you got to see a little bit more of the flaws.
Oh, did you? Yeah. So I was actually, just so you guys understand, I was actually assigned to, that PS2 team. And so I was kind of aware that there was like also work on the Xbox side of it that was happening at the same time. I saw very kind of little of that day to day. And then I totally didn't really see it much as a consumer, like I only see what I see when I'm at work. And so I didn't know that. I didn't know that that was kind of the perception. I know that the PS2 was kind of unique in what it could do. It was a really weird kind of piece of hardware, really, really unusual. The world's much more, maybe this is my perception, but the world looks much more homogenous now in terms of like, what does a really kind of compelling console look like? And you get this kind of description of the same thing, like it's just like it's what's in my Origin PC right here, it's just like it's kind of the same basic components, and then how you kind of leverage those, in a maximal kind of way differs, depending on which one you're working on, but they're very much architecturally the same. And that wasn't true back then. That wasn't, and I'm not saying that the PS2 was any better or anything like that. Anything that, engineering decides to just buckle down on can become an interesting problem. Anything that's like a fixed set of things becomes interesting. And like if you're an artist and you want to be able to, you know, kind of like you have this idea for presenting your art, but then you're given all these constraints of like, well, it needs to fit in like a 3x3 square. It's like, okay, if all I have is 3x3, then I know how to make that compelling, but it's gonna be a lot different than like the billboard over there. You know, I'm gonna do 3x3. And so anything can be really interesting from a technical point of view. That it just has constraints, and that's one of the real privileges of console development. I know it sounds weird, but like the walls of like it can do this, it has this much memory, it runs this fast. You know, the guides that you get with console development is actually kind of weirdly refreshing. And because I've worked on PC, you know, I've worked on Madden PC. It's like, well, we're trying to hit all the way from this min spec PC all the way to, you know, whatever the kind of like top of the line was right then. And that's hard to deliver entertainment that needs to hit all of those, you know? And so was there any kind of like flaw in the Xbox architecture at that time? I don't think so. I think there's probably examples of Xbox games that looked at standalone look better than anything else out there. And, you know, that's something that kind of gets lost is that, you know, some of this is art and some of this is science, like what I'm talking about, engineering, but a lot of it's art, you know? And so there's a really weird smoke and mirror things happening. And I fall into it myself when I see other titles, you know, that we don't work on. I look at it really closely and I'm like, okay, what am I seeing is just smoke and mirrors, kind of artwork, and what am I seeing that's like really creative, like engine layer stuff, you know? And that line can be very hard to see. And the kind of the more skilled the studio, like I see Assassin's Creed, and I'm like, I don't know how they're doing some of these things. So the more skilled the studio, the more blurry that can be, even to somebody that's extremely trained to look at it.
Yeah. Oh, seeing that you've brought up the whole spectrum of between the consoles and how, you know, everything's lined up and PCs, like there's a huge spectrum, you know, and this is a big contention when it comes to the Twitter world and everybody that don't know anything about game engines or any. Can you help simplify some of this stuff with game scalability with these engines and how versatile they are? I mean, they seem to like just tunnel vision, and it's like it can't be made for this because it's a different spec of the, you know, of whatever, and yet we have to explain to them if the game runs on a old Radeon or even onboard processor on a motherboard, and at the same time it'll still run on a 3090. You know, there's that everything in between is still scalable, you know, just as it is on these consoles.
Yeah, I want to say back the question to make sure I got it. You want to know inside kind of like different platforms, let's say, from one platform to another, how easy or hard it might be just to port like over to that platform. Is that the question?
It could be that. It's the scalability of the engine, that it can be ported or moved, you know, however you want to decipher the wording.
I'll start an answer and you tell me if I'm on track. The first layer would be whether or not the engine technically supports a particular platform. That's a yes or no thing. You know, you can look at it and it either does or does not say support Stadia or something like that. And if it doesn't, then making a game on top of that is going to be really not possible, right? So like, it's not even kind of a conversation worth entertaining. And then if it does, then there's this whole conversation about how do I make the stuff that the artwork, you know, all the stuff that we made to work on this one platform scaled, like to use your words, over onto this, you know, other place. And that becomes a kind of artistic conversation, an art director conversation, a graphical, you know, like the fidelity of the model that they had. How do we get that over there? Then there's like all these like layers of, art gets very technical, and there's all this layers to the art, and it's how hard that might be to kind of port to something else. And different game teams do it different ways. People will make their art that has that in mind, you know, like when they make the original artwork, it's like, well, we're going to make different level of detail, and at any point you could just say that that's the highest level of detail, and that's how we're going to kind of like work on this console thing, but also target like a mobile, iOS thing at the same time. So if that's all like thought out, it's a little easier. It's much harder to do once you're dug in. If you went all in on like one console or one platform or something like that, it might be harder. Even if it's technically possible, it might be harder to get all that art over, onto some other platform. It just depends on how dug in you end up being.
So like basically starting off with the design of the game and the direction.
When the overall design process, comes in. So a game starts as a kind of a high level production design document. And then from there, the technical kind of part of the organization will do a technical design document. They'll say, in order to ship this high concept, we have to do all these things technically, and then the artist will do their version of that too. And if you do that with the idea that this might be multi-platform, this might be, from here to here, and that's in the design, that's a lot easier thing to do. If the whole design is to go narrow and to kind of exploit in a maximal kind of way what that platform does exactly, then the idea of moving that to another platform would be really, really difficult.
So for example, on Xbox, they have 2 new SKUs that have different power levels, right? Is that something that has to be thought out ahead of time at the design phase from the get-go from you guys? Or is that something you can scale in development to just optimize for each platform? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that one's really interesting. And for an outside perspective, it might be kind of startling to see that. It's like, wow, there's 2. And if you look a little closer, you can see that one of them is very clearly kind of like at, one level, and one of them is very clearly near other projects that are kind of at that same level of, let's say, fidelity, and these consoles are pretty easy to kind of gauge in terms of like what they are or not able to do. And I'm not really meaning that from an engine layer. I'm meaning that from like the kind of like art that they can, produce on the screen. And those are kind of known quantities. And so from us, it's like, wow, yeah, interesting that they chose to do that. But it's also something we're very, very familiar with, and we get a lot of like warning about that stuff. And so that was in the design from the beginning, that we knew it wasn't a surprise. I don't know where you guys found out actually, but
Brad Sams.
Was it at launch? I mean, when did you find out?
No,
I have no idea.
There was rumors for years from just websites about with the project names and everything,
between
there was
Dealer
Lockhart
with RDX.
Sorry, say that again.
Dealer with RDX, Dealer Gaming. So he was one of the guys. You got Randall Thor. There's a lot of big YouTubers out there that are small in comparison to the corporate guys, but they're big in our circles.
Sure.
So, a lot of guys hear stuff. There's a lot of speculation, and these guys, may or may not know stuff until later on. But we all hear stuff from inside. I also talk to others that I know some stuff, but I'm not at liberty to say anything because it's between me and that person.
Right.
Yes, we've kind of known for I guess almost 2 years that we've been talking about it for 2 years that this was going to happen. So it wasn't a big surprise. We all expected it. And then when it was finally actually revealed, it's like, okay, well, here it finally is,
Interesting.
So it's interesting to see how that stuff somehow does leak from you guys or from Microsoft directly or Sony or whatever. And kind of, I don't know if it's intentionally to kind of prepare the audience and kind of with little subtle things or whatnot, but we find this stuff out. We talk about it obsessively because we're so passionate.
I can relate to that because we do too when it's things like first party. So we have a lot of information, but we don't know the thinking behind decisions that are made by first party. You know what I mean by first party, right? Mm-hmm. The people that make the thing. Right. We don't know the thinking behind like first party stuff. We get, stuff shared with us that's like, what would you do if like the console like was always online? That was kind of a big
Yeah.
conversation at the last console launch, right?
Yeah, that didn't
And
go
from a
well.
development point of view, I know that's a place where that we get caught like as a developer, you get caught looking at the development possibilities of
Right.
what they're proposing, and that's all you're thinking about. And then you kind of get caught sideways where it's like, oh, the audience doesn't want that. Like, so
Yeah.
that was like, it was like really jarring to kind of like, see that play out. And I don't know, I have no idea. I don't have any more insight than you do about like, the thinking behind first party stuff, when they disclose stuff, why they disclose stuff, like when they say the little bits of information that you get. I don't have any information either on like what the thinking is behind all that.
Right
Yeah,
on.
it's sometimes I think a lot of it, it picked up on journalists that
Mhm.
leak stuff. They get like little hints that they think a company might be going in this direction, or they accidentally seen like a prototype development type of plastic 3D box of a kit or something, and they start looking for patents on projects, and then they get the word out
Right.
there, and then it's picked up by like different podcasters, and then it gets out into the community and stuff like that. And one thing I wanted to ask you was in terms of scalability, for I think kind of like what Dreadpool was talking about, and then what you actually talked about. Is it when you're going? Do you go from the highest level first down, or the lowest specs first to the highest specs last?
Yeah, I wish there was a good right answer on that. Um, uh, it depends on it just depends on the team that's approaching it. I have to say that I think I've probably seen it done every possible way. Like you can imagine if you were charged with doing that also, like we're gonna make this thing together. It's us, it's us four, and it needs to hit, kind of this level of um, kind of compute, and it needs to also be deliverable on, this. Um, that where would you start? It's the what practically happens, like in reality, is you get teams that are immediately formed under that. It's like, okay, well, there's going to be a mobile skill, we'll put people under that, and if there's going to be this higher end one, we'll put people under that. And then they start looking at it kind of from their point of view, and there will be people that are solely responsible for that one platform. And so people end up kind of being able to narrowly kind of view the whole product from their platform point of view. And it's hard to kind of look at this with a really wide angle lens and think like, how does like Madden get delivered on all these different platforms, and how does that work in terms of development and organization? And it's complicated. It really is.
I'm actually glad you answered it like that, because there's, a lot of sites out there and a lot of speak on Twitter, I think, is that, they hear from one person's perspective, right? Maybe
Yeah.
one developer said something in an article, and all of a sudden, it's taken out of context, and everybody's like, oh, they always build from the highest scalability first and then go down. Then people argue, no, it's from the
Right.
lowest
They
to the
Yeah, right.
nobody asked around. They just
Yeah.
argue off
You get,
one
because
sentence.
you keep getting more and more qualified people saying like, no, I was actually at a development studio in North Carolina or something like that, and they were like, we totally did it this way. And so yeah, I was trying to kind of acknowledge that in there, is that there's kind of a lot of different ways of approaching this, and you could totally have seen it done one way, and then you could go to a different studio and see it done totally a different way.
Would you
And
say it maybe
so
depends on the kind of game you're trying to build as well? Right.
yeah, I mean, it depends completely on what I was trying to say is the original design. That's like kind of where it
Yeah.
all starts. And from there, it's like, okay, that means that we need to like kind of nail the look and feel, like feel. I didn't mean to say look, to get the feel of a game, right? Like I'm thinking of like SSX in my head or something like that. To get the feel of a game, you don't need a lot of like performance to do that, right? Like the way that it feels to animate down, right? Like slide down a mountain on snow, that can be prototyped on any number of platforms. It doesn't really matter where you are. You could kind of experience that in a web browser if you have the right controller in your hand. And so feel of a game like that doesn't really have a lot to do with the full expression of the game in terms of like what it looks like and what it sounds like, and like all that stuff. There's like the simulation of a game, and this is where people might get caught up. Like this is where people might misunderstand porting. Is that like when I kind of was helping Madden console, it was actually the PS2 game that we ported to the PC title. The very first thing we did was get the simulation running, meaning big grid and a lot of skeletons playing football on a black background, and so skeletons ran around and they threw a little ball that was just a line and played football. And there was a score, there was a winner and a loser, but all you saw on the screen was lined, like skeletons running around in place of where all the stadium and field and everything should have been, and so that was the very first thing we did. That was fast. We got like the console version of Madden running on the PC really quick, and it was like, oh wow, this is actually like a kind of a fast process porting. And then you start to do the other parts and it's like, okay, we got the field, and that took as much time as porting the whole sim, and the stadium, and then the sky, and then the atmospheric conditions, and then you just start layering. It's kind of like if you get into like, I don't know, you're really deep into Premiere or Photoshop or something like that, and it's like, wow, how does that kind of final thing turn out? And it's like, well, there's like a million layers, in here. And there's the layer that does this, there's a layer that does that, there's a layer that does that, and you kind of just keeps going forever, like as long as you want to keep zooming in. And that's how a game ends up kind of being in its implementation, is like there's the sim, and that can be pretty easily cross-platform and pretty easy to port. I've experienced that. And then the kind of the way that a game is fully realized on the screen, that can be very hard to port, and I've experienced that.
Okay,
So you say that the feel of the game, that's one of the, I guess maybe one of the first things kind of that y'all go after also,
It
right?
is.
But besides, when y'all got the information for the new consoles, these new next gen consoles, was there something that you were just excited to be able to put into EA games that you've been waiting for years for console gaming? Or is it just more same old, let's just keep doing our job, we just got higher specs?
Are you asking about this console transition, or
Yeah,
like
this console transition.
them?
Specifically this one with Series X, Series S, and PS5.
Yeah, I was too far from it. I was, really looking at this kind of from a completely different point of view,
Right.
and so like, actually being on the teams, I know from like the Xbox One transition, that it was like, oh wow, one of the coolest things about the hardware in the PlayStation 2, like Xbox One, kind of generation, there was the ability to just finally get a fully 3D world that was like shaded and looked really kind of high fidelity from our point of view. It actually looked like the artwork that people were making, in the studio.
Mhm.
And you can go all the way back and see that there's like, like the concept art for Diablo, and then there's like what is actually on the screen, and that was like a major, like difference. And today we romanticize that a little bit, and it's like, oh, 8-bit stuff looks cool again, or something like that. But at the time, they wanted to be able to get as much artwork onto the screen as they possibly could. And the thing that I like the most about this console generation is I've never seen the artwork look closer to what the artists are really able to do, like, so they're the fidelity that they're authoring at, we're able to actually like finally from a technical level get that onto the screen. And the art's always been that good. The art's always been like really amazing looking. And it was just like, it was harder and harder to get that up on the screen as you walk back in generations. And like looking at the PS2 compared to the actual like final product, compared to what the artists are really capable of doing, it's cool to see that gap finally shrinking. And it's like, what's on the screen is a lot closer to, I think, what the artists are really capable of, and we're finally seeing that.
Awesome.
I got a question, and I know this is probably going to be a little controversial. and you may not be able to answer this, but with your expertise, maybe you can kind of give us some insight as to why. But you know the debacle with Madden and the 2019 on the newer game. You know what I'm talking about?
No,
Yeah. Well,
give me a little bit more.
Well, when you looked out in the stands, everything was the new year 2021. Then you looked down and it said Madden 2019.
Oh no, I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, that is it something that would it be because reutilizing of assets and just something that was obviously an oversight, because you wouldn't put that on there on purpose.
It sound I have no idea what that is. It sounds like something was just missed, and stuff like that, happens on a really big development. You have a lot of assets that are in there as placeholder, and it doesn't necessarily mean that was from any other year or anything like that. It could have been as simple as, until we get the final approved art for that thing, I'm going to just shove this in there, and it's whatever they had on their desktop.
Okay.
It might be as simple as that. Like if I was actually kind of working on something, and placeholder has that word, for a very specific reason. It's literally somebody saying like, okay, that art doesn't exist. So, and then they grab something off their desktop to placehold that, so that it can physically be there. Like if it was a banner or something that somebody was holding up. I might grab anything that I have in my documents folder to put on that, right? And artists do that too. And so at all levels during development, placeholder art is in there. We've gotten smart and we've started to do things like, well, use a bright pink texture. Don't use something that looks like it might be right, because you're just asking for a miss right there. So I have tons of like screenshots of that. I should have prepared some of that stuff really early on, kind of Madden stuff that's ancient history now, but you can see that it's like there's stuff that looks right, and then there's stuff that's bright green or bright pink or something like that. And so we'll do stuff like that for that exact purpose. So it's like if you see pink anywhere on the screen, it either means one of them means texture like couldn't be found, or one of them means placeholder or something like that. There'll be some kind of like color coded system. And I've seen it all in the old days. People would just use something really similar to the final asset for a placeholder, and that's just asking for trouble. That's just
Right.
like you could imagine if you were doing it. It's like, no, I want big words that say placeholder, so I know not to let that asset go, because it just gets so big so fast when you have so many teams and so many stadiums, and so it's like there's not just like the crowd asset. It's like this team at this stadium at this time of day. It just goes on and on and on, And so, you'd be asking for a mess up if you had placeholder stuff for whatever reason, wired in there, and stuff like that. Stuff like that does get through. I think I've seen somewhere a Madden screenshot that had that like neon texture somewhere visible, like in the crowd or in the stadium or something like that. And that's something I pick up on. I'm like, that texture was missing. Like I'll actually see it go by.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because upon seeing something like that, the initial reaction, your feelings take over, and you feel like you're being jaded. That they're just rehashing the old game, and we know that you're not rehashing the old game. You're expanding on it and improving on it, and stuff like that. But it's always that feeling that, like, why are we paying the same amount of money for this? And then you see proof. But now, it's great that you're able to explain that it's just a placeholder. It's just a freak accident, that it wasn't meant to be like that in the first place, an oversight.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm so familiar with this, and it kind of just goes without saying, but such an enormous amount of work goes into these iterative, titles. And even though they have the same name on them, like in the end, it's just like a full-fledged brand new everything, kind of from a production point of view. So, the last one ships this. I'm going back to when I was on Madden. The one ships, and then you get like some time off, and you go on vacation and stuff like that, and you come back to what's called pre-production, and that's where they're kind of pitching the whole next year's thing. And there've probably like been people thinking about that, and then that becomes this big whole conversation, and then that whole design gets done, and then the technical side of that gets figured out, and the art side of that gets figured out, and it's just a massive, huge thing every year. So yeah, an asset that slips through at the end or something like that is not kind of indicative of anything interesting at all.
I've had to remind people that, a lot of the 360 games were anywhere from 6 to 9, even down to 3 megabytes, gigs, you know what I mean? And then you're going to games that are 120 gigs.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
a
glad you
lot of
brought that up.
information.
I'm glad you brought that up because, from a developer's point of view, you want, your game to be all it can be. You have to look at like, what is a developer trying to kind of, you're familiar with like min-maxing a character, like in a role-playing game or something like that. We're always trying to min-max stuff. And it's like, we're, caring the most about like what gets up on the screen while sacrificing maybe the size, right? Storage space.
Mhm.
Now, if you ask the question, well, could you invert that? Could you could you not care about what was on the screen and only care about your footprint? That's what we call it. And it's like, well, sure, there's all kinds of compression stuff out there. And so if people were like, wait a second, stuff doesn't have to be that big. There's technology out there, that like can do all kinds of interesting stuff. There's procedural stuff. There's all kinds of reasons that games don't need to have the footprint that they have. That just doesn't tend to be something that developers are working on during the project. They tend to, and that's evidenced by a lot of games that I download from competitors too. It's like, wow, they didn't care anything about the footprint at all, and I see my SSDs going away. And so I've experienced that also. It's getting to the point where I think that actually is going to have to be paid attention to again. Because, if you start in the beginning conversations, I'm going to go way back for you. When they were doing the Ultima Online, when Origin was doing Ultima Online, they had a problem in the beta that they couldn't physically get that multi-megabyte download to their people that were participating in the beta. That was too much to download. That goes back to when people were paying like by the minute for their internet access. Like it goes way back. And so it was just unpractical to even imagine somebody could survive a download as long as the Origin online beta. And so they did this crazy thing where they were like, it's going to be $5 to be in the beta, like it's good. That'll cover the cost of us putting it onto a, CDR media and getting it to you. And that might seem controversial today, but at the time, this enormous number of people signed up to participate in that beta. And that's kind of like shocked everybody that was in the, had visibility on that. It was like, wait, there's how much interest, for like an online game. People wanted it that bad. And, that was back when games were really small. So when that barrier got broken and it was possible to kind of like, download however big the game is, right? Or if they had media, it was possible to, rip it off that media and get it onto the hard drive pretty quickly. When that dam was broken, then that was no longer like a constraint on development anymore. You weren't that, concerned about like, will it fit on a CDR or is it feasible to download? That conversation kind of like went away, and now we're probably gonna have to look at it again. People are like running out of space.
Well, also a lot of people have data caps, and if you're a heavy player of lots of different games, especially with these next gen systems, they only have a limited amount of space, so you're constantly having to move stuff around, right? So
massive. Yeah,
I have one game on my hard drive between. Well, I'll go ahead and say it's Call of Duty, right? So between the new Call of Duty and Warzone, which is also kind of one cohesive experience, you're taking up 240 gigabytes.
Yeah, that's so similar to like how it actually is when you work on a game. So if you can imagine all the, so those are all the final assets. That means after they've gone through the whole build process and all the things that need to be done to them have happened. That's the final build of the game. Imagine you had on your hard drive all the source assets that built that, like it just keeps going back and back and back and back. And a lot of times those are even bigger. You're talking about like raw Photoshop files, stuff like that, things with layers in them and all that kind of stuff. All that comes down onto your drive so that you can build the game. And so it's hard from a developer's perspective to build more than one game on one on one machine. And when I kind of move between titles, it's like, okay, I got to remove this whole thing from my drive just so I can build this other thing, you know. And so I've been swapping out for a very long time. That all like sounds really familiar.
I got a question in the chat from Pong Soul. He wants to know about how to prioritize new features like the DualSense haptic feedback, and are those things given an allotted development time from the beginning, or is it put on the back burner until the end?
Oh yeah, so certainly not on the back burner. There will be things that you know that you kind of find out about things at kind of certain times, right? Like you'll hear about it at a press event, or you'll hear about it wherever. Sometimes there'll be little parts about the console that we don't know about either, and so like we'll find out about things kind of as they're released to us in a similar kind of way. That's kind of rare though. Most of the things about the platform or whatever we will have learned about way in advance. And if that has an interesting application, and that's, by the way, a design decision, you know, on whether or not something could be like haptic, whether or not that has a really interesting place on this particular title. And I think if you kind of like sat on it for a while, you'd see that like on some titles that's more interesting and on some titles that's less interesting. And so they'll make a design decision on that. And then kind of instantaneously they'll be allocating programming stuff, you know, like time to work on it. And, you know, unfortunately we work in an entertainment business. And if the final thing doesn't like land as we had hoped, that sometimes happens. That doesn't mean that it was never prioritized. That doesn't mean it was never wanted to be done. That doesn't mean, it just might have meant that at some point along the way, the execution fell down. And that does happen sometimes. And when things are on a clock, you know, it's like, this has to be done by this time or else, you know, it's just that the opportunity window is gone. That is a really harsh reality of working in development. Back on the PS2, it was like whatever we got on the CD was it. That was your experience of the game, period. And as a developer, it was nice in the sense that once that thing shipped, it was like, I can go to the pool now. But as also as a developer, anything that didn't make that final build, you know, that cut, you did not go in the game. Now we have a much greater ability to patch and to day one patch and to, you know, all that stuff. And so things that were missed and maybe production wanted to do, engineering, whatever went wrong, there's so many more opportunities to get it back. But something like that would be known about in advance. Production would decide this is a cool thing to spend time on or not, and then engineering time would have been put against it.
Okay. You got anything else, Matt, before I move on to the next question?
No, you can go ahead on the next one.
All right. Back from the Dead wants to know, do developers utilize cloud storage with how much data goes into the assets to building video games?
Yeah, we do. All the stuff that that you're familiar with, you know, the third-party options out there for storage. We do that. Something that people don't think about a lot is that not only are we kind of actively developing something, there are snapshots of that active development that are continuously being like backed up, you know, so like save all your work kind of stuff. And you can imagine when you're looking at something like the scope of any of these franchises we're talking about, if I was working on Call of Duty and you want to take a snapshot of Call of Duty, that means all the source assets and all the code and everything necessary to build that Call of Duty on that date. So like today is December 4th. You want the ability to go like, I need to go back and build Call of Duty on December 4th, 2020. That has to be something that the dev team can do. There's a lot of reasons for that. But that data has to all go somewhere. And so, you know, these things happen. And I remember back when it was like tape, you know, these backups were made, then they were committed to magnetic tape. And then they were like archived away somewhere in a drawer. But if you wanted to, you could always go back on December, 4th, 2014. What was the entire development snapshot on that day?
Yeah,
our storage requirements are massive.
I'm still hearing that tape is still faster because of
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, I don't know. That gets into like, you know, what's the most what's the best implementation when you get down to mass storage? I have no idea, because they're prioritizing like cost per gigabyte above everything else. You know, it's like even above speed. It's just like whatever. What is the lowest cost per gig? And I don't know that world at all. Have no
Yeah.
idea.
I figured between speed and the cost, the tapes would probably be cheaper. You know, you're getting the
You have
whole
to-
lump sum because you're not looking for a specific thing. You're just getting everything. And when it
Yeah.
comes to everything, it seems like tape is fastest. And that's
Yeah,
what I've been reading.
you and different things start to become a priority when you're just looking, like, even personally, it's just like your own backups and stuff. It's like less about speed and more about like, I don't want it to ever go bad, you know, like to ever degrade. And that gets really challenging with storage. And this is a harsh reality of entertainment also, is that you know, the whatever you kind of worked on last is always in the process of disappearing into the past, you know? So like, to say, you know, like, I worked on March Madness 99, try to find evidence that that game existed even, you know, right now. And so everything is always in this process of like fading, you know, in the background in game development. And that's hard. Like when you have worked on those things, and that's kind of like, such a huge part of your life, you know, like a whole year of your life went into working on that one thing. And it's got a number on the end of it like that, you know, especially with sports games, and then it's just disappearing. And that's hard. And one thing that has been really helpful for me, just from like that perspective, is all this remastering that's been happening. It's like, oh my goodness, we might see all that whole franchise again, or we might see that title again, or, you know, that kind of stuff. And I just think that's really personally interesting. I don't work on any kind of remastered game, but I think that would be fun. I'd love to take some of my favorite games and remaster them for, like, let's say the current consoles. I think that'd be a blast.
Which would be the one that you would choose the most? Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I have a huge love affair with Dark Souls. Dark Souls 1. And now we have Demon Souls, right? But there's something about that, my first experience with Dark Souls, that just makes me always want to go back there. So when it came out on the Switch, I went back and did it all over again. I like made my character and played through the whole game all over again, you know, kind of for the first time in some ways. And I can't ever get that game out of my head. That's what I would remaster.
We'll see. Maybe it'll happen. I mean, they remade
I know.
Demon Souls, and hey,
this is
why not
easy
go
to
Dark
talk
Souls?
about because I have no idea. I don't have any FromSoft connections. You know what I mean? Like, that could not be farther from my world. And I think that's why I like the game. If you know a little bit about like kind of the theory of game design and stuff like that, that game does nothing right. You know what I mean? It's like, well, what's the player experience when they get in? And it's like, there's no pop-up that says there's no pop-up that says like, well, actually, they have a few. They do have a few right at the beginning that are like, to equip, press this. They tell you a few. And I have this weird feeling that was against the opinion of the design director. I really think that. I think they were kind of saying like, no, don't help them with putting on a shield, you know, like at the beginning there. And it ended up just being like 4 pop-ups. And then that was it. It was like, you're going to get 4 little, you know, do this, hold this to run, you know, or whatever. And then after that, no more. 0. And I have like really, really good friends that got personally jammed up in that game, and they'd be like, I'm stuck, I'm leaving it, rage quit, gone. And it was a whole like social thing at work to get people playing again. You know, I was like, go back to your character, keep it going. I love that game. I love that game for every way that they kind of presented it, to kind of like how the lore is like hidden in the game rather than just being on the nose, you know, delivered at you like in a cutscene or something. I love everything about that game. I like the way that the combat feels. I like the way that the kind of the world slightly starts to open up to you. I like the way they don't show anything off, and there's like huge payoffs for things. It's kind of like when you go to a movie and you've seen the trailer, you know, that whole experience. And it's like, I saw that moment already, you know, and really diehard fans will not watch that stuff. And so Dark Souls was very much like that for me. You know, it was like the parts that are supposed to have a big payoff, they had those payoffs. And it's hard for somebody that works in video game development to have that authentic kind of player experience, if that makes some sense. If that's all you do, you know, you have to like look hard for, it's like, okay, where do I go to now? Where do I go if I leave the studio, to play something? And I'm not saying that's unfindable. I disappeared into Zelda forever on my Switch also. So, I mean, it's not an obsession with FromSoft or anything, but I love that stuff. Really love it.
The one critical thing I have about that game is the physics. Now, what do you think about the physics? If we can get more games, I'm going to use that one because that's the one we're talking about, right now. But more games getting real physics in line, because I'm sorry, when you get a huge giant swinging this badass sword at you, and you're gonna like dink, or you get hit and you fall down. You don't even go flying. I've brought this up before. You get hit by a car at 55. You don't just drop. You fly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, I will not only join you on this rant, I will one up it and say that this is where I'm getting torn out of like cinematic experiences now. So when I watch Spider-Man, I'm like, you just broke all these laws of physics, because the way they moved the camera, the CG is now attached to that, and so where they have to break physics, they will. And it's like, nope, the character needs to be there. And so they'll do that. And I see that all the time. And it's like, oh man, this is like jarring. And so I get brought out by that also. And I know that like, a lot of times what's really there behind, motion picture development isn't a physics simulation. We do more of it than they do. They'll be animating, and so animating is not physics, right? And they are not physicists, and they don't, all that stuff, like real destruction. What does it feel like when a bus really runs into something? Getting all that right is really difficult. And it would take a really, really good physics sim to even get it right, and there's a lot of research out there on that. And in movies, when I see it and I'm really sold on it, I have to go figure out what I looked at. It's like, I think when I saw Bad Boys 2, I think it was, where they were like going down a highway and they were just throwing cars out of the back of a semi, like a tractor trailer kind of thing. They were just throwing them out, and the camera is just like barely dodging them, as they come like rolling at you. And I was like, this actually feels dangerous, like to film. That's the way I felt when I was watching it. I was like sweating and like, this is like really visceral. And I went finally, like somewhere in a commentary track or something like that, Michael Bay was like, everybody asked me about how do you get cars to look that good falling out of the back of a trailer. And he's like, well, you go 60 miles an hour down a highway, you put a camera really low to the ground and you throw cars at it. That's how you do it. And I was like, oh, okay.
Physics works.
That works really well. And so there's a realness, right, to like practical effects and practical physics. And people just don't, like, if you want to go down the rabbit hole in that, look at like Terminator 2 or some movie like that, at what you think was CGI, and it wasn't. It was a practical effect that some artistic master put together for you. Like that whole thing where he turns his arm into like a metal rod that goes through somebody's head, like on the freezer or something like that. Practical, made of metal. That's why the reflections look so good when the camera's like moving around and stuff. It's like, it's the best CG I've ever seen. And it's like kind of a congratulations to them on delivering that experience to me, so when I'm watching that, I'm like, wow, that looks real, like even like with a kind of a technically critical eye, I'm just completely sold on everything I'm seeing. And it's because they're tricking me, they're leading me to believe that something was kind of CG and it actually wasn't. And I didn't even know artistry could be that good, and yeah.
And you're bringing on, it's funny because you're bringing on to the next part of the question that it's perfect. Okay. You're talking about the realism, because you notice how once CGI became a little bit better, where they were using it more often, and it was visibly like, oh man, you could tell it's CGI. Come on, and you, like you said, with the cars, you like that realism, like how they do that. And I feel like we're starting to do that now. It's like the new tech, the new icing on the cake right now is ray tracing. Like you look at a lot of these places, everything, even even concrete walls that should not have that kind of a shine.
You know how they're putting it on there? Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Mhm.
it's a mirror finish on a concrete wall that's just,
Right.
you know, it's just blocks and stuff. It's like, come on.
It's that clear
Right.
stain, man.
Right.
Right.
They're, you know, everybody
Yeah.
wants this feature, and it's a great feature. Don't get me wrong. I'm not downing it, but you know, it'd be nice to put it a little bit more in reality. You know, let's,
Yeah,
you know,
I totally hear you. I have a bunch of thoughts on that. When I was like actively working on Madden, people would ask, "What did you work on?" And it's like, okay, well, you see how that material doesn't look at all like concrete. I like that you use concrete, because that was my joke about it. I was like, see how like their helmets, that doesn't look like concrete at all, does it? And what people don't know is that like the way concrete looks, or more technically like chalk, the way chalk looks is what we call just a diffuse shading model. There's no highlights on chalk. You can't get them. Like no matter how strong your light is, chalk's still going to look like chalk. And when you start getting up into more complex, you know, like human skin and stuff like that, you're able to read all these different things in the environment. There'll be like tight highlights, but then there's also like soft, like diffuse properties of skin, subsurface scattering. It goes on and on and on. And so what makes a material look different than another material can be quantified by all these different kind of things. And kind of historically, getting stuff right, like concrete was the easiest. And then it was like, oh, we can do plastic and metal really well. And those things started to be like Transformers. It was like, well, how do you make a CG movie that only uses concrete and plastic and metal and shiny stuff, you know, shiny metal, like kind of finished, you know, kind of car paint look. That was possible right then. You know, that was really possible. And so you get this movie that gets that one thing really, really right. And even by today's standard, you look back and you're like, yeah, that's really good. But it kind of ignores the thing that's like a challenge for us right now. And ray tracing, for me, just personally, a little bit feels like one of those, here's a solution. What's your problem? You know, like I can do reflections like really well. Do you have reflective stuff for me? And people might do what you're saying. Sure, this has some reflection on it, this concrete or whatever. And you know, like the reality is that any new feature is competing with the way that we used to fake that thing, right?
Mhm.
And so it's not that you didn't see reflections in puddles and stuff like that. Go look at any Need for Speed, or you know, it just goes way back. And Black, if you know that first person shooter, was doing some really innovative stuff with just putting sprites, which are like a 2D always camera facing object, and we're using sprites to make really interesting happen with the atmosphere and lighting and stuff like that, just layered sprites. And they did really innovative stuff that still looks innovative today. And so the ways that we're, you know, the way that artists are faking things is always the competition for whatever the latest tech is, right? And it's like, well, does that really beat the way that we're faking it? And I don't have an answer for you on like ray tracing. I can just tell you that the way artists have been faking it has been pretty good, you know. And you have to have that A/B, you know, kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, I can see. I can see now. It's definitely the real thing that was being reflected, not this, you know, like weird out of focus blob. And if you have to go that far, it's like, I'm not sure that is interesting to me technically, if you have to go that far. If whatever the new thing is, I want that to be obvious the minute you see it. You know, like if I showed it to you, I want you to go like, wow. I don't want to pull out an A/B. I don't want to do that.
Do you have a preference when you play, whether you would, let's say, okay, this has to be with ray tracing on, it can run at 30 frames per second. Or if we turn ray tracing off, it can be 60 frames per second. As a player, not as necessarily as a developer, do you have a preference with that?
Yeah, a lot of times. Well, so as a developer, I'm so jaded that I'm going to be picking apart everything they do anyway. So I turn it all off. I might turn it on once to see kind of what the whole experience feels like, but then I'll go right back and slam everything down. And it's not that I don't think it's cool. It's not that I don't think it was well done. I don't think that some, you know, really interesting engineering might have gone into it, all that stuff. But that's not why I'm playing games. You know, like I'm not trying to be impressed by the tech. And so yeah, I'll switch stuff off.
How often do you find yourself doing the breakdown of the technology that was put into the engine?
Off.
Exactly.
Cannot
right.
Turn it off. No. Everything I see, I have some, I don't know how it's done. Okay. So It would be like saying you know how like every magic trick is done or something like that, but you have a pretty good idea. You know what I mean? It's like I have a pretty good idea on how most things are done. And so when I see them done, about the farthest as it'll go for me is like, huh, that's a really compelling and artistic way to have approached that. That's about as far as it'll go. You know, it's not a mystery to me what they're doing or how they're doing it. It's like a novel kind of take on it. And so it might be something that I know really well or I've seen before, or I know kind of how the technical, parts work out. But every once in a while, somebody will come along and present it in a way that I've never seen before. And it's like, that's cool. And so I like seeing that. I more pay attention to the thinking behind stuff rather than like, I'm not sure how they did that technically, although it does happen. I mean, there occasionally I'll see something and be like, wow, don't know how they pulled that off. But mostly I'm thinking about like, I wonder why they chose to prioritize that over that. I wonder if that was like, if they just bake that out or if they're actually, like simulating math in on some of those things you don't really know. You can't tell by looking at the game, a clear yes or no. And some of those things I'll go to like GDC, the talk on it or something just to find out.
In terms of like, let's say, generational improvements or tech that has impressed you throughout the years, because I know you told us a little bit about your history beforehand, before the
Yeah.
show, and you've really been involved in the games industry for a very long time. Um, I believe you said Ultima was one of the things that,
Middle school. Yeah.
yeah. So when you, if for me, right, one of the biggest things that I loved going forward throughout the generations is I really loved how Super Nintendo really made everything like cartoonish. Like,
Yeah.
saw like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles look really good on there. You saw Super Mario World look good on there. It really felt like at times that you were playing cartoons. And
Agreed.
even Super Mario Kart was fun with friends, couch co-op. You were like, wow, this looks great. And for that time. Um,
Agreed.
do you, in the history of video games, where do you see some of the biggest leaps from that you saw improvements in, generation wise?
Yeah, I don't think for me it doesn't come down. I'm really similar to your answer on that. It does not come down to a generational type thing or a tech type thing, like something that the hardware can do. It comes down to more like what somebody creatively did with the constraints that they had in the time that they had to do it, and so that is really impressive, like the way Mario Kart looked and the whole expression of that game on that platform. It's like, wow, they took whatever that platform offered and they delivered this. And that always holds up for me. It's like I know what constraints they had, I know what they were up against, and that they went that direction with it and then they produced that artistic thing has always been really compelling for me. We talked a lot about tech stuff, but I'm just a huge fan of art, just a huge fan of the whole artistic side of our business. I'm a huge fan of it. Um, uh, and I'm kind of the most interested in um, the all the different creative ways that games differ. And I want that to be a world that we live in, is that we kind of stop talking about tech stuff and it just falls into the background, and games are more distinguished by the creative things that went into them, and I don't want us to be kind of limited in any one particular way. And we kind of picked on physics there because that one's hard. And that one rips me out also. And it's like, I want nothing more than just kind of the artistic vision of a team to be, able to be realized. I'm not saying that for games that I work on. I'm saying I want that for games I play also. I want whatever they wanted artistically. I want to be on the receiving end of all that. And, modern engines are always trying to get that done. That's their job in life, is to get what the artist has in mind out to you. That's their role in life. We call it plumbing inside. So the best an engine can be is plumbing. The best it can be is to deliver exactly what the artist wanted to do over to you. And people can get kind of funny on how idealistic that sounds. But if you look at tools in the audio space, audio editing, like if filters, if you guys have gone down like music creation, rabbit hole stuff, their tools are amazing. And the ability to kind of make something creatively and then see that in the output is outstanding. I mean, it's like, it's a place that I look for inspiration on what do just killer tools actually look like. And I look a lot at audio for that.
There's I was gonna say there's one game from EA that really impressed me on its launch, and that was EA's version of Battlefront. I really liked I
Yeah.
don't even know the name of the map, but that snow map. The first time I played that,
Yep.
I was like, man, how did they do this? This map is gorgeous. Like the snow
Yeah.
just looks so good. The
Yeah.
sound effects when you walked on that snow was
Yeah.
I mean, it was epic. It was just like an epic experience. For the first time
That's
that you
great.
played that, you felt like you were almost in that experience,
Right.
and when you said that games are like an art, I agree with you. They are art. To me, it's I get engulfed in the story, the sound effects, the visualizations, and it for me it's like reading a good book, except my imagination might be on the screen, and I can play through that story. And when you get games like a big games like Dragon Age or Skyrim or Elder Scrolls, it's really cool because there's so many different paths that you can go, like in The Witcher, and I know it takes teams of many talented people to bring these things together, and I just appreciate that experience so much because there's a lot of great sounds, voice acting, great detail, great side quests, great writing. It just makes these games so immersive, and that experience is like nothing else for me. Like it's the best experience ever.
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah. I almost don't want to say anything on that. That was so beautifully said. That's kind of what we're always trying to deliver, and as developers, you're always your hope is to always deliver that to every fan on every title that you work on. So that was really beautifully said. I also happen to know that on Battlefield in particular, that snow was like modeled up with sand, and they would actually physically use models of like the what's it, the AT-AT or something, and they would like step in the sand with the model and scan that, physically like scan
Wow.
the sand. Okay. And if on the game development side you were like, it would be easy to kind of be like, is that really necessary, like to use a model to just to move the sand and then scan the sand, kind of it seems possibly excessive, right? But then you hear him kind of tell that story, and it's like,
It
the
was
way the
worth it.
whole thing,
Yeah.
the sound and the way it looked and the way all those things come together, and it's like, well, that's what people are trying to do in the end. And kind of the hard part about our industry is if one of those things doesn't kind of completely come together, it makes the other ones look odd, and you're like, why do they spend so much time on that? And it's like, no. Equal kind of amounts of attention were spent on all these things, and one of them may not have really landed. And unfortunately, kind of like our physics example, that's all it takes. It's like one thing doesn't stick its landing, and you're like, well, I'm not really picking apart the way Spider-Man like looks. He looks great. It's the physics. It's all wrong, and the poor artist is like, yeah, that's not my job. My job was like his suit or whatever. And if one of those elements just feels off, it can really ruin the whole thing. And so kind of this whole space of CG, not just gaming, but this whole space of CG is like continually trying to like handle all those edge cases all the time. It's like, what's the next, like, if it's not visual, what's the next thing that's going to really sell me on this whole feeling? And you have to figure that over and over and over again, because like on Carlo, your thing, that's not something we want to do one time with you. We want to do that multiple times. And it's like, yes, I know you're older, yes, I know you're jaded now, all those things, but now how do we show something to that older jaded version of you and still pull off a whoa, like I'm all the way back in it again? Because I didn't think that was possible before I fell all the way into Dark Souls. I was like, I'm too jaded for the entertainment industry now. You know, like there's not a movie, there's not a game, and that's not really like a pessimistic point of view. It's a reality if you work in gaming or entertainment. It's to just be like, yeah, I don't have the magic anymore. Like when I watch stuff, and then something will come along that gets you, and that's always a magical kind of a feeling. And it still happens for me in movies and in gaming, where I get swept away by it all, and it's just pure amazing again. And you know, that's why I don't kind of leave this industry, is because I never kind of give up on what Carlo was saying. Never give up on that.
And you know, we've talked to audio directors before that work, you know, as third parties to, you know, the actual studios, like they're outside help or
Right.
something. And one of the audio directors I've spoken with, and I heard this on the radio, and I actually brought it up with him, but like sometimes audio is actually used as a science for emotions, and I've noticed like Hollywood movies have done this a lot, and that's what was on the radio program. They mentioned that, you know, Hollywood movies actually they studied the science of audio to get you that tearful emotion and tearful moment, or get you pumped up with like a pumped up song and an action hero flick. And I noticed gaming recent, you know, more recent
Yeah,
than Hollywood has done similar things. And you see
for
that
sure.
when you play games like racing games, right? I was playing Need for Speed Heat since it's come to Game Pass with EA Access, which is fantastic, by the way. Uh, and I just love sometimes how like that music comes on and it pumps you up in the middle of a race or a destination. And
Mm,
then also at the same time, what's really immersive and this is for a while, Need for Speed actually almost lost me, right? But
mm,
Need for Speed Heat kind of brought me back when I get chased by the police in that game. It just
right,
feels so real because, like, the communications back and forth, you can hear, like, the
right.
dispatch, the officers, and they're asking for, like, reinforcements, or and they're talking about the vehicle you're driving, where you're headed on the map. Like,
Describing it, yeah.
yeah, and that is just that's immersive. Like, that is so cool. And I hope more people get to experience Need for Speed Heat, especially since it's in Game Pass now, because
Neat.
that I mean, that is a fun experience. You know, it's just having that kind of experience, and it draws you in, and now I'm like, "Man, I wanna get better cars, and I wanna get in bigger police chases, and I wanna crash some of these
Oh,
cars."
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remastered also,
Heck,
which
Yeah.
just came at that
heck
for an
yeah.
older game. We were playing that sense of speed and adrenaline rush
Yep.
is still there. That's one of the most fun racing games that I've played in a long time. Just as I haven't played a lot of it again, but I was surprised for a remaster like that to feel so fresh,
That's
right?
awesome.
So I don't know what all went
I
into that.
love the idea of remastering so much. And kind of from a tech perspective, it allows you to just like take whatever the thing is and just tee off on it. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
analogy for me is just like literally, you know, throwing up a baseball and just like going to town on it, you know? And so just being able to take something that's like so fixed like that and so kind of complete in its own way and be able to kind of give it a whole new, you know, kind of like expression on the screen is just so cool. And it's really neat, the sense of speed. I've just heard this, like so much thinking goes into like how are we gonna sell a sense of speed, you know, and like so
Yeah.
much thinking goes into that. There's so many artistic things, there's so much audio, there's so much stuff that goes in there. And to bring it current again, one of the ways that I've seen ray tracing really interesting is audio. And they'll use like so let's use like road rash or something. I'm just trying to pick something random. You're driving down a road and you can imagine like I'm thinking of like the 3DO version I played. They had like just these really tight buildings, you know, that you were going through. If one thing that would be possible with ray tracing is to like shoot rays out and see like what's, kind of next to me and deliver that sonic experience of like buildings going by, the reflection of your engine off the building. So you're not looking at reflection of light off the building. And kind of you're saying earlier, like that concrete's not supposed to be reflective. And it's like, yeah, use it for audio. You know what I mean? Let's like bounce audio off everything all the time. And I've seen demonstrations of that. This is stuff that's out there. I've seen demonstrations of that are just like, wow, kind of like when we get back to saying like the practical thing, there's like no substitution for it. Well, yeah, when it's like being physically simulated like that, not every building you're going by, but also the race could hit cars, if they're parked or something like that. And if there's a cop coming right down that intersection, on you, what that's going to sound like when you hit that gap between the buildings. And right now that would all be like canned or faked or something. And that's a cool expression of like what it is that ray tracing does. Can I hear that guy from here is the question, not can I see that guy from here? Can I hear him from here? And what does that sound like? That's a cool application of ray tracing. That's something I could really get behind.
Yeah.
See,
that sounds cool.
I've got a problem with the Need for Speed that they decided to do. They should have done Underground right from the get-go. Right?
Yeah,
Underground's
you're tugging on my
amazing.
heartstrings because I was there for that. Like that was happening in Vancouver when I was there. I don't mean like I was on it all the time, but I got to do stuff on it, and that was just a cool privilege to be able to do it. Oh man,
that was my
fun.
favorite. That was by far my favorite Need for Speed, and even Carbon couldn't match up to
I
Need for
agree.
Speed Underground.
We get competitive like this, even internally, especially when like titles are moving between studios and stuff like that. I mean, it's a playful kind of competitiveness, but you want to be able to like show like this is our studio's version of this thing we all love, and that's a huge kind of responsibility. It's a huge thing to take on. It's like, okay, this next iteration of it is on you guys, and if the last one was really good, that can be really intimidating. It can be really hard to go into that and be like, oh, okay, the last one was amazing, so and you're starting all from scratch again. And if you can kind of get a flavor of that, that's what iterative development is like, no matter where you are. Like that could be a version of Madden, that could be a version of FIFA, that could be a version of NHL. All of those titles are like really hard to follow up on every time you deliver one. I know from the outside, you don't always see all that effort, but internally it's really, really challenging. And that, my opinion of that has not changed over like a lot of experience.
All right, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. You were talking about, the design of the games with the artistic intent from the creators. This kind of was a topic a while back about like games like Dark Souls and Demon Souls being too hard, that they need to make like an easy version for other gamers that don't get into it because it's too hard for them, and they want to open it up for more gamers to have access to enjoy that game. And my part of it is, yes, they should, but at the same time, you lose what that game was about, because if you do it that way, then you don't build up those skills and those achievements. Because when you finish beating the boss, and you're like, after the I don't know 50th time, and you're like, yeah,
right.
I finally did it, and all that struggle and perseverance, it gets you going like that, So that's why I think, yeah, they should, but at the same time, I think first and foremost, it should be under the design of the developer. However they design their game, that's how it should be, and that was the intent.
Oh yeah, that's a real struggle, man. I mean, like you can see that in movies that are released when they come out with like director's cut. It's like, well, why is there that? Why is there a director's cut? And it's because somebody wanted you to see something else, right? That's why they come out. And so that's always like a struggle. And I know for me on Dark Souls in particular, if I just knew as a player that there was an easier mode, right, that would change the experience for me. I would experience it differently, just knowing that there was an option somewhere in the menus for just like, nah, I want it to be the easier way. just knowing that that's not even possible makes those rewarding experiences hit that hard, and that game is really brutal. And there were places where I was just like almost about to quit that game, but that feeling makes the next progression feel even better, and that's a creative decision to go like, I want to push players mostly to like quit. I want to tell them all the way along the way, maybe this isn't for you. Like this probably isn't your game. That's my pitch the whole time. And it's like, well, then when you say like, okay, now you're in the club, and no, never, zero, ever. That's the whole pitch, is that we're going to keep clobbering and say, nah, this isn't for you. No matter what you've accomplished in that game, you can still get, kind of tripped up and never get to that feeling of like, just, where you're overpowered compared to the game they wanted to make. That game just doesn't really have that. And man, do people find it well. That whole like, if I max this out and I max that out and I max that out, I just dominate over this whole game. I think that's probably a creative decision in the beginning, but I don't ever want to get there. Like when I'm playing Dark Souls, I just want there to be more of it. Like when I get to that final guy, I just don't want it to be the final guy. And I don't have that experience with every game. A lot of games I play, I kind of get to that last level. Like I played Ghost Recon. What was the latest one? Wildlands? Is that right?
Breakpoint.
Yeah,
Breakpoint. That's it. Wildlands was before that. So I played Breakpoint, and when I got to the final kind of mission of the story, I was done. I was like, that was a really good game. I really enjoyed that. And there's a lot kind of technically in that game that I think is really impressive. And then when I got to the end, I was like, okay, cool, I'm done. And unless my brother wants to like get on and like just play for the, the point of playing, to talk to each other or something like that, I don't have any like real pull to go back in there again. Dark Souls has me forever. I always want to go back in.
Yeah, I mean, I love when I play like Halo. I usually go legendary. Dark Souls is not my kind of game, but I can respect the gamers and the developers for that game being what it is, because in the
it's
community,
like really good. It's a really good films will have like all the discipline to go like, this isn't actually for kind of everyone, right? We're not trying to hit a wide audience here. We're trying to hit a specific audience, and they kind of stick with that. And I think that's not a formula for success or anything, but that's cool when you see it. It's like a film that was like made for a certain audience, and you can kind of go like, yeah, I see how that would work for that audience. It's not really my thing, but I see how that would, really work for one audience. Yeah. And if you do something that's just, my own opinion on that is, if you do something that's just kind of for literally everyone, it's for no one. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's too kind of homogenized. You always have to be going after a specific audience. And we have that, man. And it's like, you get around dev teams and stuff like that, they have really particular kind of things that they're going after. It's like, we want this player, and they'll even like name them and stuff. It's like, what will like David think of that, and what will, like they have like whole personas and stuff like that inside the dev side. They'll use that in the design, they'll use that in the execution, they'll use that in the reviews. It's always like an ever-present thing. So they think a lot about you.
Well, in our community, we try to remind everybody, because everybody gets opinionated, so we try to remind everybody that not every game is for everybody. Yeah. Everybody has their own taste. Every game is designed for different people, but it's a gaming community, and stuff like that. And what I want to know is, when can I get my name in there? So when they say, what is Dreadpool going to like in this game? Why, we got to make this for Dreadpool. When is that going to happen?
Oh, be the audience person? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be that.
Yeah. Something that I want to see really bad is a game that delivers what they want to deliver, and then is really flexible on the way they let you like mod it after it ships, and so you get these weird examples of like, do you guys ever play Desert Combat version of Battlefield?
No.
It was like a mod that was literally good as like a standalone game, like a mod of the game that was good as a game, and it's called Battlefield Desert. I think it's called Desert Combat. And I like that stuff. I like seeing I'd like to see like a world where, you know, people that kind of specialize in the creation of different, you know, types of art in the community able to get those things up and into the game. I think that would be really cool.
Could
Like
we see
people that
something
are
like
performers, people that are composer, you know, like there's always this running joke, like if you see Mythic Quest or whatever, that it's like if you give any kind of creative control over to the audience, they're going to draw dick pictures, you know, like that's a joke in Mythic Quest. And it's like, yeah, I know. Yeah. But not, I mean, there's a lot more there. Like if you keep going, there's like going to be like a composer in the audience that's like, well, if it's that easy to like, you know, get my work into that game, maybe I'll do it, you know? And so there's people out there that are really talented and they might even not, they might not currently have access to gaming. They might be like a civil engineer at work, you know? And when she comes home, it's like I model, you know, 3D model all this stuff. And it's kind of like people going down into their basement and working on their train sets or something. They might just be their passion. That's it, you know? And it's like, every day I want to do this as my passion thing. And then I'm going to go back to work as a doctor or whatever I do. And that's my passion thing. And their dream isn't really to be in at a game dev studio. Their dream is to just might be to get their thing just up into, you know, a place where people can view it. And I like that world a lot. I think that's really compelling. I think the idea of, you know, the audience standing up and performing is infinitely compelling. And
could we see
Uh,
something like that in the next set of consoles that we have coming out?
it's creative. I mean,
Now,
it's a you know, it's a design decision, and there are really interesting examples of this happening right now. You know, there's like really kind of compelling experiences that are being made by users, that are being made by, you know, the community, and in my opinion, they're kind of like the low-hanging fruit parts. And the question is does this keep getting interesting the more I climb up? You know, it's like people are able to author these interesting kind of experiences or whatever, but they're not able to like author really high-end models or really, you know, high-end audio experiences, you know, that kind of stuff just isn't in the capability right now of it's hard to find examples of that. Like if I was a composer, where can I put my work and what interactive entertainment could this go, you know? And I think that that's really interesting stuff. Really, really cool.
one thing I wanted to say was that you know, EA produces a variety of games, and I don't think that people realize how diverse, you know, the portfolio of EA is. You guys got the sports division, you guys got
Right.
like the Need for Speed, like the cars,
Yeah, it
and
keeps
then
going. Maxis, there's a whole, you know, The Sims is a whole kind of, yeah.
and one of my favorites, and you might be surprised by this, is the Plants vs Zombie series. Like
So good.
Those are great games.
it
Yeah, so
is
good.
just I mean, people that haven't played it, it's just amazing. Like it's so cartoonish and so much fun. And then like it sometimes it just really pulls you in and you want to level up like your plants or your zombie characters. You want to get like those cards.
Yeah.
And the
I
latest
already had
one,
him pegged, by the way, for everybody else, not for you, Carlo, for everybody else. When he was describing Mario Kart and he was talking about the Nintendo stuff, I was like, okay, he's Plants vs Zombies guy. Totally.
yep, I am.
I already had you pegged a long time ago.
And you know,
But this he's being a good example of what we're talking about. It's like if we were making, I can look at Carlo now, and there's a lot I can remember. And it's like if I'm making a game that I really want to target him, there's a lot I know about audio. There's a lot I know about music. There's a lot I know about how the rendering style would be. So I'm already kind of thinking like what kind of compilation of things Carlo might really like. And I have some pretty clear ideas of that. I just wanted to illustrate that that's what we're doing all the time. And we're doing that with our audience all the time. And, you know, to like any random individual out there in the audience, it can be like, well, it doesn't feel like that. And it's just like, my goodness, you understand how many of you there are like it just in the population of really hardcore fans, like one level deep, you know, that might actually be interacting with developers and stuff like that. There's already a ton of people, And so it's just massive kind of when you're on the other end of that. There's just information coming in from all directions all the time. It gets really, really noisy. And it's fun to be able to just kind of isolate down like what you three would be interested in. And it doesn't tell me everything about like who's watching this and what they would be into, but it tells me something. Like they're gonna be like really similar to this picture I'm getting right here. They're gonna be really, kind of like they're gonna be like this, particular kind of interest or point of view, and we pay a lot of attention to that.
I think with Game Pass, also EA Play being part of Game Pass, you're gonna maybe see different kinds of engagement from different gamers in a lot of these games than you would have seen before, where you've had EA Play. But that was just an isolated thing because it was EA games. I don't remember the amount of subscribers that were just part of that program, but I was personally. But then as Game Pass comes in, you're already going into an ecosystem with 15 million plus subscribers. It gives people an opportunity to play a game in a genre that they never would have necessarily went out and bought, just because they don't want to maybe have a regretful purchase, right? So I'm curious if you guys are going to see different levels of engagement because of Game Pass with different titles, and it might actually influence the kind of games that you guys make in the future.
For sure. I mean, we're always like really, really kind of like looking at who's playing and what their feedback is, and that will just happen naturally. I can tell you from a developer side that you're really kind of focused on delivering what you're supposed to deliver, and a little bit oblivious to kind of the whole marketing and publishing side of the organization. So like we're kind of just like really quickly moving between parts of the organization that are really different, and so some of that stuff is like when I see it released, it's new to me also. There was a day, and I don't know if it was on technically the release day or what, but where I was like, oh wow, that's going to be available now, through there. And so some of those hit even developers by surprise, and it's cool to see that.
I've got a question out in the chat here. Determined Hero wants to know. He's curious.
How is anyone still with us? Where are we? 2 hours? 2 hours almost.
These guys in the chat, they love you guys.
I'm
they
thrilled.
love these interviews. So we can't love them enough. You know what I mean? But back to Determined Hero, he's curious if there's any word of another SSX game.
Yeah, I have
exactly
no way to possibly address that.
It's 3 years in the making. Okay, Hero.
No, I don't. I can tell you that there's a lot of like really cool. I mean, you don't have to look very hard to figure out like that. There's a lot of really cool things in EA's portfolio that they could, kind of take action on. But you start to understand, like when you get kind of on the insider, I talked, a little bit about like pulling back that curtain. One of the things I got to see at the beginning is that like, oh, there's not just a massive like people in this studio. There's teams, and they like sometimes they'll have like names, like they'll have like weird little kind of internal code names, informal. And you start to understand that it's like, oh, that they're like that team's assigned to that team's assigned to that team's assigned to that team's assigned to that, period. Like at the end of the day, you realize when you're in one studio, everyone's assigned to whatever they're assigned to. And the answer to the question, is there something compelling that one of these teams could also be doing? And the answer is always yes. Every single time. It's like, yes. Syndicate. Do you anyone remember that game? Syndicate was a really cool EA intellectual property thing that I think that could be that could be a thing. And so you're always up against that. It's always up against like, is there some interesting thing that a team is not working on? Yeah, that always, all the time. Are there interesting things that they're working on that you don't know about? All the time. That's part of the that's part of the fun of all this stuff.
Yeah.
One of the questions I have for you is, when it comes to a big publisher such as EA, what is the deciding factor, or who decides, or analytic wise, statistics wise, what makes that decision to take a game and make a remaster of it? Because we see that Mass Effect is getting a remaster, and we're a lot of people are excited about that. I could tell you.
I am too. And I wish I have two things. If I wasn't able to tell you, I'd tell you. I actually wish I knew the answer to that. I don't have any kind of visibility into why things are chosen to be remastered. I do have visibility into what's being remastered, which obviously I wouldn't be able to tell you, but like, I also don't know for sure exactly I could tell you a little bit is the availability of teams, like I was telling you, but a lot of times those are contracted out. They'll like spin up some third-party studio to just remaster something, and I don't know exactly what goes into all the thinking. I can tell you that, like on a not remastered title, just new IP, I've been around those teams a lot, and it comes down to just continually pitching. Pitch and pitch and pitch and pitch, and there's decks and there's presentations and you're always kind of saying again like why it's a compelling thing to do, and just like everything else, that process can be kind of brutal. If you're trying to pitch a book or you're trying to pitch a movie or like stuff will kind of like be legendary for floating around Hollywood for like a decade, and they'll be like, we're finally going to make it. And all of a sudden it'll be funded and it'll be like, a movie that has this long story behind it of not getting made. And, stuff like that is brutal. I mean, it's like if you're kind of we have passions of like, the titles that we have worked on. There's stuff that we personally find really interesting. The more professional you are, the less that affects whatever you're assigned to. It's like I might kind of secretly, I guess, want to be on Plants vs. Zombies, or to use your game. Like maybe I really feel like I have something to contribute there as a developer, but as a pro, I'm just going to do whatever I'm assigned to do. So we do have kind of those kind of preferences and things like that. And I have no insight at all into how some, that shall be remastered. It feels like it's almost like, just winning a game show or something like that. Right.
Yeah, it does.
That's only because I don't see it. That's the only reason. I don't know. I'm sure somebody could answer those questions. Like, well, we do this whole mathematical model, and we know all this stuff about the audience. I don't know I have no clue what goes into making those kind of decisions. I just know when they happen, it becomes like, okay, what team can be assigned to that if it's new IP? Or if it's a remaster, are we going to assign a team or are we going to do it third party? Those are the two conversations that happen. And I see those. I don't see the thinking. I don't get the privilege of being able to see how all those things happen.
I think my favorite EA remaster this year is actually Command and Conquer.
Oh, that's great. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
They did an amazing job on that one.
Do you know who did that by any chance?
I don't know. I just know it's awesome. It stays true to the original, but it also brings in like new music and
did they do anything? Did they do anything you disagreed with, or did you just full?
I thought it was perfect. 100%.
That's great.
Perfect. And now I would like for it to also be on console, because I even though RTS is a PC first genre, I have always enjoyed a good RTS when it's on console. I was playing Command and Conquer 3 Tiberium Wars on Series X last night because it's backwards compatible, right? Halo Wars is another good example of a great RTS on console. But yeah, that's one franchise, the EA has that,
totally agree with you.
I want to see more of,
Yeah, but totally agree with you. There's a lot in the portfolio. I want to answer as many questions as I can. Is there anything else from you guys or in the chat? I'm going to try to do a few rapid fire where I don't go really long on them.
We do have one which is not dealing with gaming, but it's dealing with Switchblade.
Oh, sure.
So
hold on. Keep going.
Yeah, I saw you had a case for those now.
The question is
in design, right? Yeah.
Right.
Is there an idea of turning that into like a mini PC?
Yeah, that's a cool question. I actually, this is the picture that I was going to try to preload for you guys, but I was actually really inspired by, it's the transition from remaster is just really weird, but I was really inspired by a motorcycle that I bought, and it's a cafe racer. And do you know what those things are? Like,
I do.
A picture in your head of what that is? Yeah. So Cafe Racer is some old bike. Mine is a 1982 Virago that some builder ripped apart and put like a Yamaha R6 front end on it, and the rear suspension off some other racing bike, and he made this like really interesting kind of thing that is a part of it's not really any one thing. It's part of all these different things, but by itself, it's this really cool piece of art. I always think of it like a moving sculpture kind of a thing. Like I like looking at it. I feel weird not showing it, but I like looking at it as much as I like, like writing it and stuff like that. So I was really inspired by that. And it's just down to the bare bones of what is in a bike. It's like the fairings are stripped off, all the things that are non-essential are just ripped off that bike. And it's like, well, that's going to be really raw looking. And then you end up with something like this, which is just like an SSD literally and a USB port. You know what I mean? That's all we got going on this thing. And it's like, okay, that's really raw looking. And I didn't think anyone would want this form of it. This is not my like vision of it. My vision of it is to kind of follow the design of like that Cafe Racer and just be like, okay, just function. And then just the bare minimum of like anodized material on there. And so I'm going to like put one more deck on these two decks and kind of top it off without adding any width at all, with really polished looking kind of like anodized, aluminum stuff. And so that's going to complete it. That's it. And, the answer to the question of like, could you still pour a drink on it and ruin it? Yeah, it's just a piece of art. It's not supposed to be like competing with Western Digital or something like that as a storage, solution. It's supposed to be a piece of art. That's what it's supposed to be. And so is it going to evolve into anything else? Yes. I have another one here, which is arguably even more compelling. Is a one layer NVMe version of the same thing. And it's just too expensive. I can't come up with a way to do NVMe as an art project. So I'm back on this guy. And I'm going to, finish him off and do the cool, like aluminum bits on the top. And I've been like shocked with how many people I keep offering. Like there's specific people that have already been like supporting this, buying it, and just cool stuff, really cool support. And I offer, like, do you want to be the first one with the aluminum on top? 3 people have turned me down. Like,
Really?
no, I want the OG one.
Really?
And I'm like, wow, 3 people in a row. I would have never thought they would have the first. I was going to let somebody else publish the grabs. I was going to let somebody else show the thing for the first time. I wasn't going to reveal it. And I tried 3 times to give that away, and 3 people in a row said no. I want the original model. And they're like, I might get the later model, sometime, but they like the fact that it's just a work in progress. And it has this, I think I have one right here. It comes with these like holographic stickers on the back that say pre-production on it. And oh, there's yours. Sorry, that's a perfect example. So he has his pre-production Switchblade there. And I was a little shocked at the response on that. Like I was kind of in a rush to get it all finished off. And I have several people that are like, no, we just want that version. And that kind of illustrates the complexity and understanding an audience. You know what I mean? Like you think you have these kind of like, okay, I know kind of what people want. I know that hasn't really been done like as a configuration of parts. Again, I just think it's a compelling configuration of parts. It's not the only option for getting SSD media plugged into your thing. It's not. Just supposed to be compelling. That's all it's supposed to be. Yeah. And I know it's compelling, and I know for who it's compelling. But then I find that I get surprised by stuff like that. I'm like, you want the uncased one, like over my offer to give you the cased one. You want the uncased one, and it's just weird that you can be in this business for this long and still kind of be kind of intrigued by the mystery that the audience is. If that makes some sense.
Well, it's also the uniqueness.
You always feel like you have it pegged. It's like, okay, it's a Carlo. It's like I have got like all these different people in my head, and I have a lot. So I have all these different people in my head, and it's like, okay, I have a sense of what the audience is, and you do not. You don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. It's like the world of like a stand-up comedian or something, where they don't know for sure if a particular audience is going to, if what they do is going to land for a particular audience or not. They don't know. And they find out when they get out there and they take the mic and they do it, and they can kind of sort out like this material always lands kind of, unless it doesn't. And they're never sure. Is it something I did? Is it something the way the audience was different? Is it the temperature? Is it the, like, is it the region I'm in? What was different like this time? And they're all, if you talk to them, you find out that they're always mystified by this thing that we call an audience, not an individual, not a person, not like a personal preference, but an audience. And that is a weird thing in entertainment, is like, I'm talking to you three guys, but there's also an audience. Do you know what I mean? And I might be hitting different people in that audience, but I'm never hitting all of them, and on some of them I'll never hit. They're all gone by now, but on some of them I'll never hit. And that's just a weird mystery. And if anybody ever figures it out, it would be really useful for people that publish media, because as you've seen in movies and everywhere, lots and lots of effort and money goes into things that don't work. And so much thinking goes into looking at that, why, all that stuff. It's just brutal. That's a really brutal aspect of working on any kind of entertainment product.
Well, sometimes it's also,
hold on the SSD thing. For anyone that doesn't kind of follow this stuff, it's at Switchblade SSD. That's the Twitter handle and the Instagram handle too. So
I wanted to say on the Switchblade, I really like it. Well, one, it is really fast. Like it's a lot faster than my normal externals. I put Destiny 2 on this. I'm not even like a Destiny player, but Destiny 2 loaded super fast compared to my plugged-in USB 3.0 drives. Like it was amazing.
Wow,
like
cool.
I couldn't believe how fast it was. I'm gonna like time it because it was awesome. But
the numbers I've been getting back are really shocking. Like I do a lot of testing to make sure that it functions, like that it works. It's just me. So I don't do a lot of like actual, tests like what you're talking about. And so seeing that feedback of like, I loaded this game, this is like off my, stock hard drive that's in the console and on like PS4, and then this is off the Switchblade, and they give me the numbers. I'm like writing all that stuff down, so it's really cool to hear that.
Yeah. It is. And I'm sorry, Dripple. I just wanted to say one thing before you get to ask yours, Dripple. I just wanted to let you know, Jim, is that I really love the fact that the way that these are designed, so far, like the versions that you sent out, it almost looks like, it reminds me of like tinkering with electronics kind of right. Feel. And I love that feel because, personally, I've always loved tinkering with stuff. I may not be as technical as Dreadpool is with all the, the terminology, but like I love Linux. I love different flavors of Linux and Unix, and I love making, sometimes I, try to make my own things outside of the box. I'm never as cool. Great as a manufacturer or someone like yourself, but I make things just barely enough so that they work. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
totally.
I think that I love it. I just love that feel.
That's so cool, man. And there's no, like, I never even imagined a world where something like this could even exist. Like it has no marketing, behind it. It has no kind of advertising thing behind it or whatever. It's literally, it goes all the way back to my original experiences, like in middle school age at Origin Systems, where there was the stuff of legend was that Richard Garriott would sell the first version of Ultima or whatever it was called back then, like in a Ziploc bag. It was a Ziploc bag with a game and a piece of like Xerox paper that had all the stuff on it and like, the little bit of manual or whatever that came with it. And I was like, there's something really romantic about that. Like there's something really cool about the fact that you got a thing that somebody put in a bag and that's the product. That's the whole thing. And it's like, this is just like kind of my attempt to kind of go recapture whatever he was doing when he sold games in Ziploc bags like that. I've gone a little bit further in my presentation of the, when it shows up, but not much. It's still kind of just minimalistic, as much as I could get away with without risking damage to the product. Like I'm trying to just like minimize everything. And I think that comes through on the other end. To your point, you don't have to be in any way particularly technical to get that feel, on the other side of like, it doesn't feel like anything's faked on here. Like if you look at it, you're like, I think all that stuff needs to be there. Like it's clearly not decorative, you know, kind of stuff, right? You know that. And I think that that just comes through. I think it comes through that something is just pure function. And for other people, they're like, well, no, like I want a whole form, you know, thing put with it. I want it in a beautiful aluminum case and, you know, all that stuff. And so I'm trying to do a little of that, but without taking away any of the feel of like, this is just raw function. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I don't know that I have it exactly right. And by the way, I want this to be almost like a crowdsourced like project. I don't know if you guys know this, but like different people that have followed this are running the Discord, are helping me with the Twitter stuff, are running a Facebook group kind of dedicated to this stuff. And there's whole communities in there. If you go to the Discord, there are people there. And somebody else did all that stuff. So it's all been kind of like from the community. And then like I had kind of a design of what I wanted in aluminum, but I don't have that particular expertise on like modeling that out in like Fusion. And I don't know that stuff. I just had an idea. And somebody that was an engineer offered. They said, I'd like to take a crack at it. Send me like images of what you want. And so someone I don't know designed it, and I just like sent them some money on PayPal, you know, afterwards or whatever. And so it's been extremely collaborative. And if anybody has like a real vision on like how this could be really interesting or how it could evolve, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, because when I saw it, I was interested in doing it. And then two of my friends decided to contact you, and they each got their.
Wow, you know two people?
Yes, I know
That's
two
amazing. Wow, that's amazing.
Because when they both said it, I was like, you know what, I'll back off. But I am interested in doing it and testing it out. I would prefer the non-aluminum.
You would too?
Yes. Oh,
so
yes.
He's
definitely.
the customer, by the way. He's the customer.
Yes, because
if you have trouble getting rid of the aluminum one, I'll be happy to take one off.
Yeah, see, we've got two different customers. Two different customers.
But that's the thing, though. I would take them both.
Yeah. So would other people too. They said, you know what, sign me up for the aluminum one, but I also want this one. And so that's just a particular person. I'm not trying to like pitch that or anything.
Yeah.
I want to like, I'm interested in all these things. Like I'm interested in you that just want the raw thing. And I'm also interested in people that want the finished thing. I think that's really interesting and cool.
I want to see what the difference in performance would be having that extra aluminum there, because as a heat shield, you know what I mean?
It's very much a shield. Yeah, I'm not trying to sink anything, you know? So like the design of this is using standoff so that the aluminum never touches the chips that are under there, the NAND, you know, memory. I specifically don't have any aluminum touching it. So it kind of looks like a sink and it feels like a sink. And you think that when you see it, but it's actually to prevent you from touching really hot parts of it.
Right.
It's a human shield, not a heat shield.
That was my understanding too, because when you were explaining it, I envisioned a shield.
Good.
Because
that's what I want. That's what I want.
But
I want an engineering kind of mind to say like, this has to be there. I mean, it has to be there or else you would touch it. And it also looks kind of cool, but I want it to feel functional. I don't want it to feel decorative. If you understand
right.
Like that's the conflict that I deal with. I don't want it to look like a decoration. And then I tried to do it so many times I tried to do it with just one layer of aluminum. And I'm like, it just looks like unfinished to me. I couldn't make my peace with it. And so I went with two really thin pieces of aluminum that are cut exactly the same in some places and then are cut a little bit differently in other places that give it some kind of depth or something that I was happy with.
And you know my background, obviously, so I am interested in all this tech stuff. So it definitely intrigued me, you know. And like I said, when two of my friends said, I was like, you got to have it first then, because I don't know, it's got to be a limited quantity, and I'd rather pass it on and let everybody else have a chance too.
Yeah, I am working on, I don't mind saying it to this audience. I'm trying not to say it to like, to an audience that I can't take it back from, you know what I mean? But I'm really comfortable with you and then everyone that would be listening to this. So I'm trying to do something where I use like eBay's internal mechanics for like offering coupons. You know, they have this stuff in there. And so I can lower this thing down to pretty much exactly what it cost me, you know, like just cost. And obviously the ones that went out already, A lot of those I paid for. Some other ones people literally just paid what I have listed on eBay right now. Something I'm trying to do is work out a way that I could make a link that is just cost, and because this is, if you kind of wandered all the way into this and think I'm trying to like the plug this and this is the only reason that I'm here, or that I'm somehow motivated by kind of the sales of this thing, you completely misunderstood everything that I was trying to say about it. And I just want a lot of people to have it, period. And unfortunately, it's kind of costs a lot. If you think of like how much that NAND costs and then just multiply that out a few times, you know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
there's 3 different versions. There's 256, 512, and terabyte. And then there's 2 terabyte, which is just too expensive for me to like buy a lot of, it's just like, that's too far. And so I was able to just I have a whole lot of 256, 512, and 1 terabyte. I want to show you like how I get it. I'm trying to see if I have any around me.
Yeah, because for me, I'm interested. I built an NVMe little adapter and hooked it up, but it's limited. And that's why what you have is different. That's why I'm intrigued by it.
Cool.
I've had it on my, for 2 years now on my 1X. So doing that
neat.
stuff. Yeah, I've had
so
that.
You've done it a lot already.
Yes. I have the Samsung 860,
I know it.
500 gig and a 1 terabyte. I also have the 970, which is the NVMe.
I have the 970. Mm-hmm.
And I have that inside a case, and it's USB plugged in, and it's great. But yet again, it gets hot. Like, I don't know why people don't know this, but NVMEs get hot when they get used.
Very.
And even they stay warm when they're not used. But either way, but it's still a limiting factor of the adapter. The adapters are slowing it down. So yes, I'm getting better speeds than a spinner or than the 860 because of the speeds that they can do, but I'm still limited, and I cannot find anything that gives me the actual performance that I should get out of that NVMe. And with what you have, it opens it up. And that's why
you're still going to ultimately be limited by the bus that you're plugged into. And for those that don't understand this, there's only a few different buses in a PC, and one of those is the universal serial bus, USB. And then internally there's a PCIe bus, and there's a SATA bus, and that SATA bus is terrible. It's just awful.
Mm-hmm.
It's like for being internal, right? I don't mean to like call it out like that, but like for being internal, it's really low, right? And so that's why all these things are like NVMe, plugin stuff. You're seeing all this like on my Origin PC below here, I have NVMe plugged in it too, and the fastest kind that I can get. And then that's a good place to start. But then it's like, okay, storage is always going to be a tiered answer. You know what I mean? It's like RAM, it's like, I want the fastest possible, but I also want a lot. I want the fastest possible, but a lot. And so you end up with a cache structure. And it's like, okay, the very fastest stuff is at the top. And then we have less fast stuff. And this is like where physical distance matters. Just going off the chip, is already a speed penalty. And so you keep walking that out, and there's more opportunities at every stage. It's like, yes, the internal buses are very fast, but yes, the external buses are getting fast really quick. Like the next generation USB, Thunderbolt stuff. I mean, there's like all these things that are out there. There's stuff already kind of trying to outclass that thing. And so the external buses to me are really interesting, as like, I can't imagine a world where they won't be a part of the picture. Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
I don't ever see that going away. It may be less compelling at times. It may be less interesting at times, but I don't ever see it going away. And I've been shocked, honestly. I've been, seeing feedback of people saying they're already running out of their terabyte space on their Generation 5 platform, and really already running out. And it's like, wow, we're not very far into this for you to be up against a space problem, like we're like really early for people to be kind of saying that they're out of space. I'm not first party. I have no idea kind of what the plans are or anything like that. I just understand that there's a kind of a place for really fast, solid state storage like this.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing is right now we have issues with download speeds. We have data caps. There's a lot of that going on. Granted, I don't have that issue, but I like to have all my games downloaded so I can play any
Wouldn't it
game
be
I
cool
want.
if this was an option, if you could just be like, ship it to me on the Switchblade thing, and then once I have it here, I'll erase it and use it for whatever I want. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it could be
It could be anything.
a transport media. You know, like
Yes.
I send them blank, but if I wanted to, I could load them all up with, I don't know, some something that I made, or it could be anything. And so it's a good transport mechanism, not just a fast temp storage thing. And so yeah, it's really interesting, and I thank you guys for bringing it up.
No, it's great. I mean, it's like for me, I've got an 8 terabyte an 8 terabyte
Platter.
spinner.
Yeah,
Yes.
so do I.
And it's one of those Seagate hubs, and I'm not a
Yep.
fan of
That's
Seagate,
what I
but you know
have.
what? That thing works great, and that it's
Mhm.
the first Seagate that I can actually speak proudly of. And then I've got the 860, like I told you. I've got the 970. I've got the internal on the Series X, and I got the external expansion card
Wow.
on that, and I am almost full already, and that's with all the
Oh, no
games.
kidding.
Mhm.
Even your expansion.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
Wow.
full. I'm both.
So-
Are you really?
Yeah, but I already had 400 and something games.
Is it because of all your backwards compat? Is that why?
Yes.
Well, it's that backwards compat, but also you have a few bloated titles like Call of Duty.
Yeah,
right,
that's
that
the
are
thing we were talking
240
about.
gig.
Yeah.
Mortal
That's
Kombat
just
11.
mean. It's like, come on,
Yeah.
man.
Mortal Kombat 11 is 110 gigabytes. So you add all these up, right? And new games that I already own keep getting optimization updates, which is a good thing. I'm not complaining about that. That's awesome. You know what I mean? But you want
they're
those on your
growing.
internal. You want those on your internal storage, right?
Yeah.
All right.
So it keeps happening. And in fact, Madden today.
Do any games have the option of like kind of splitting their install into like the internal and
Call of Duty does, so you can
Okay.
you can take off like once you finish the campaign, you can uninstall the campaign.
Oh wow, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
and then you can just have the multiplayer.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a process though.
Somebody
They
went
took-
into some work to make that happen. Wow.
Yeah, they took that cue from basically Crackdown 3, where you had two different games, but they put it as one, but yet you can separate the one piece out from the other. Where
Wow.
Crackdown was actually two different games, even though
Like
it's
you
bundled as
swap all
one.
the data out.
It's
and
all
it's
there.
Something else.
You just
Wow.
it's all there. You just separate it out and say, you know what, I don't want the campaign version, and that
Huh.
part of campaign is gone.
Huh.
Crackdown, it was two different games. But that was the whole Microsoft approach. Is if you want Battlefront, you can have your campaign and you can have your multiplayer. When you're done with the campaign, because there are certain people that they only play multiplayer. They never play campaign, and we all know
Oh,
that.
right,
There's
right,
others
right.
that only do campaign because they don't like the multiplayer aspect because
Right.
of whatever cheaters and whatever, so they can cut that out. They don't need it, but they'll pay full price for that game as a package. But
Right.
why have it on there if it's not going to do anything but hold up space?
That's awesome. I had
So-
no idea that was a thing. That's like the first step, right? If you were going to kind of like pay attention to the footprint of the game, the first step would be like, well, let them uninstall what they don't want. That'd be step number one. Like if you saw an engineering breakout, it would be like, give them the option of like uninstalling whole chunks. And I could see that. Like, I know that like, when you experience like different levels and stuff like that in a game, and you're not ever going to go back there again, maybe, they could give you the option of uninstalling some stuff. But that's getting weird.
Really, it all started with the voiceovers, the language.
Oh, because they're doing multiple
Right.
languages.
Right. So you could take off if you don't need Spanish,
Yeah.
take it off. But if you don't need English, take that
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. And if you didn't need full motion video, you could take that off, because a lot of times that's what it'll be. It'll be
Mhm.
something like a cooked out movie, and it's audio, that are just like ripping through hard drive space. Game assets themselves are kind of big in the sense that like, textures are not small and stuff, but nothing compares to like what a video does. It's just tearing through space. And some games will have like what looks like their engine in the cutscenes, but they've done like a little bit of work on it, and so they'll cook out these cutscenes onto the drive so that they get to do like post-processing stuff. They don't want to just use the engine. They want to cook it out, and then they want to doctor it, and then they want to put it on the drive, and that gets big fast. And it can be hard to tell when you're watching a game. You're like, oh, it's just the engine still. I'm not like in CGI land, but it
Well,
is. They cooked it out with the engine, and that can be hard to see with your eye. It's
Well,
compression artifacts is what to look for.
Jim, I know that we're getting on the 2 hour mark, so I just want to make sure that you're comfortable and probably
Yeah,
toward
totally fine.
So we have a question in the chat for you on the Switchblade. Ivish asks, could you take advantage of SoC tech to add to the Switchblade?
System on a chip? Is that what he means?
I believe so. Yep.
No, I wish. There's the compute capability of a machine, and then there's like the data capability of a machine. And when you start to work in gaming, you realize really fast that like all programmers think about code, but like really good ones think about data, moving things around. And so very quickly your job becomes about getting the data where it needs to be. So please understand that I think about that stuff. And once you get inside the computer, off the bus, there's all kinds of cool ways to get things around. And once you're in there, like there's really cool ways to move data around that don't involve the CPU. That's what made the PS2 so cool, is that it had dedicated ways of, just if you don't mind the illustration, of being able to say like, I want that chunk of data over there. And that was it. You didn't have to like read, write. It was just this, it's called the DMA, direct memory access. And you had this way of commanding data to be moved around. And this kind of part of the system that was not the CPU moved the data for you. And that has a really, really cool place on PCs. If that was ever to be done, that would be up to Intel and AMD. And, like there's a lot that goes into that. But we do have the ability to do this like in the console land, where we control kind of the whole thing in there. There's all kinds of interesting ways to get memory from one place to another place that don't involve just manually copying, one place to another, more at that high level, kind of commanding them to be in different places.
And
Wow. I did all that without naming anything that I'm not supposed to name.
I have two.
That might have gotten really weird, but if I was able to, I'd tell you all the different things there. But there are ways to get memory moved. It's just not anything I can leverage into this. It's not. There's no compute problem. I'm able to saturate out all the available bandwidth of USB 3.0. Period. For sure. Like I know what the potential bandwidth is of USB 3.0. I know what I'm able to get out of it. This NVMe stuff is really fast, but not sitting on a 3.0 bus. You're going to be eventually bandwidth limited by the bus, not by the memory. And TLC and MLC, like NAND stuff like this, it's a little closer to like the actual speed of USB. That's why I chose this, is because the speed of the memory really close to the speed of the bus. That's why I chose it as a thing. And the more you know about it, the more you can see it. And you're like, oh, I see. It plugs straight into a USB port and it uses all the available USB bandwidth. That's cool. I get that as a thing. It's using all the available USB bandwidth. That's really cool. Now, if you thought of plugging this into a hub that's sharing your port with other things, that's not cool. It takes all the USB bandwidth, all of it. You can't plug anything else in there also. And multiple, different plugs aren't necessarily on different controllers, depending on your motherboard, all this stuff. And so it's cool in some ways and might be a limitation in other ways. It totally monopolizes that port completely.
Now, is it Gen 1 or Gen 2?
Oh man, they got so weird with the naming. If you look that stuff up,
5 gigs or 10 gigs?
I thought it was 6.0, but maybe it's 5.0. You're looking at megabit per second stuff?
Yeah.
I do all my like bandwidth stuff in megabytes because I'm a programmer and I'm not making a modem. You know what I mean? So
right. Okay.
I don't think in megabits at all. That's not like a term that I would use when I'm working on stuff. And by the way, same also with game development stuff. I would never. That is not a metric that we use. Nothing is in terms of megabit. That's like a way to describe like an internet connection in my head. And so we always use gigabytes per second, megabytes per second, or possibly even terabytes per second. So that's the terminology we use, and that's just stuck in my brain. So I don't remember the exact megabit number, but it goes even faster if you get onto 3.1. Like I have a 3.1 port on the back of this Origin PC, and it goes even faster. So it is fully limited by a 3.0 bus. Meaning if you go onto a faster bus, the memory actually goes a little faster, not like a ton faster, but it goes a little faster. And you would think that this NVMe one also goes even faster as you get onto 3.2 and stuff like that. I have not fully explored all that. I know that I max out 3.0, period. So USB 3.0, I max that out for sure. And that's kind of what it's intended to be. And when it makes sense, like on a generational shift, kind of like the console, releases, as soon as there's like a really interesting new bus, I'll go after that. And I'm going to do this Pro one with a C connection on there also. So depending on what they want, I think I have one. Yep. USB-C.
Okay, I'm interested in that too. You sold
I know,
me.
Right? They're all cool. So I have all three of them right here.
Wow.
I want one of each.
And
well,
I'm going to officially offer you the bundle pack. No, I'm kidding. There's no offer. But Dreadpool, seriously, if you really do want all these things, I'll make you the test person for all of these things, and I'll get one to you. Are you in the U.S.?
Yes, I'm in Florida.
I found out that you were my Tiburon neighbor there for a little while. I didn't know that. I found out that doing this stuff internationally gets really complicated and hard. And that may seem really obvious, but it was harder than I thought. International shipping is really tricky. And I don't have any kind of like volume discount. I can't do any of that. But I did get a Switchblade to Australia. I did get a Switchblade to Poland. I did get a Switchblade to the UK. So I've got they're out there. The international, a lot harder. Way harder than I realized. And various people have stood up and said I want to distribute this in whatever country. And I was unprepared for that. I was like, oh, cool. I have no idea how that would play out. It's would they assemble them? I don't even know kind of for sure how all that works. But this Jim, is you're watching a software guy wander around hardware world.
I have a question for you. With the USB-C one, right?
Yeah.
Is that recognized by Android as external storage?
I would love to know that.
I could find out.
Because
I would love to know that.
I got a Galaxy.
It is recognized by my iPad. I'll tell you that.
Oh wow, that is really cool.
I know it's insane, right?
Jim.
I know it's insane. Can you imagine this thing? Look how small that is. Just sticking off the end of your iPad, and if you need it, it's there. So if you do photo editing or something like that, by the way, photographers is the perfect person.
Is that one of the new iPad Pros?
Yeah, Pro. The right. iPad Pro, that's what it's called. It's almost like a laptop, the one that has the keyboard kind of fold out thing. It works in that thing, and that's a really compelling kind of addition onto it. It's I can plug NVMe into the the port.
I wonder if it will work, if the Switch will recognize it as external storage.
No idea. It's so weird. I haven't tried that. I don't try the ones that I feel are going to be too awkward. I put a full size NVMe on a USB, thing at the beginning. That was I think my very first thing I tried was this. You guys seen that before?
Yes, I have that.
Yeah. So I immediately was I can't have that plugged into the front of my PC. That is an accident, completely waiting to happen. And just personally, nothing about that looks compelling to me. I'm I don't want that jammed into my PC at all. And so these two things were my answer to that. It's if I don't want that jammed into my PC and nobody makes the other thing, then I'll try to do that. And so that's what the Switchblade is.
That is really awesome. I've been following the Switchblade page ever since you sent me the that one to test out, and I didn't even know about the USB-C, and now I'm super excited because now I really want to
it's way in a thread somewhere. It's not there's nothing really posted about it. Yeah,
I really want to try that now on the Switch, on the go.
I do too.
Oh man.
I'm gonna
I have
forward.
a feeling that I think anything that I plug it into, it might want to reformat it. You know what I mean? It might put up that dialogue. It says like, do you want to initialize this disk? And if you care about what's on there, that would be bad. But if you don't care, I think every device out there that accepts USB storage, like that has the concept of a mass storage device, I think they'll all work.
I'm
Well,
going to give you
Don't hold
a
me to
heads
that.
up. I'll give you a heads up though. The Switch is using a different style of format when it comes to their USB-C.
Oh, wow. Can they do
So
it though from the Switch?
that is the question. So you definitely
I
need to
don't-
try it out because there was
I-
some charger issues before because their pinouts were different.
Weird.
So
Why?
I would still try it
Nintendo?
out.
Why?
Of
Yes,
course, they don't do
Nintendo.
anything easy.
I know. From like a hardware, kind of point of view on some things, I'm able to be like, yeah, I could see why you would do this a little bit differently. And that's an interesting thing. That's like, if you just imagine, and this has been true on consoles forever or for a long time, but if you imagine that like everything in the PC, if you have access to all of that without any of the abstractions that Windows adds on top, so a lot of like when you write on a PC, you're using kind of a Windows interface, and whenever you swap out the OS, you start to see that like the things you thought were there are not really there. Some of the abstractions start to fall away. Linux gives you a little more idea of that. If you take the OS away completely gone, and you're just talking to the actual buses themselves, then you realize, whoa, I can like do things that the PC architecture never allowed. And that's how consoles get so much performance out of hardware that seems like suspicious to you. You're like, I know what the analog of that PC would be basically, and I'm not seeing that kind of performance. Like that console's outperforming my imaginary PC. That was easier to do in the old days, but like you can still kind of do it. And if games aren't already showing you that, they will. Like they'll keep leveraging the hardware, and it's nothing that anybody gets right year one. This has nothing to do with EA, by the way. This is just everybody.
Right.
Like no one is going to get it year one. Absolutely not. This is stuff you learn over like hard lessons and like GDC stuff and other people, like other developers. We have a private Slack channel, by the way. We have a Slack channel for developers, and the only people in there are developers, and they only talk about developer stuff. And so if you're a developer and you're not in there, it's there. And we talk about this stuff at conferences, friends we know, just all this stuff gets talked about, and it gets figured out, and stuff gets better and better and better and better. If you look at any one console at like what was shipping at the beginning of the console cycle and what was shipping at the end of the console cycle, you should see a big difference. Like it should be obvious to you, oh, they really figured this hardware out, kind of over the lifetime of the console. That is so true on the PlayStation 2. I mean, like so true. The very first PS2 games are so rough compared to where that platform eventually got. And, Sony did a weird thing there. That hardware is not like anything else. It's weird by today's standards, but at the time it was like, as a developer, you don't know what the future is. It's like, oh, I guess hardware is going to be like this now, forget everything I knew about a PC. This weird thing is kind of how gaming consoles are going to work. It looked like the future, and so when it didn't really turn out that way, it was just really disorienting at the time. Like when that hardware was around, it was just like, wow, this is how things are going to be. And then it didn't really keep going in that direction. The PS3 is still cool. It just didn't really keep going in the trajectory that the PS2 was on. Like it just kind of came back. If you will forgive me for using such improvised language.
Well,
So
I like the PS3 when it actually had the Linux portion on there. I don't know if you remember that, but they took
I
that
do
off.
remember that. I do
Yeah.
remember that.
I enjoyed that.
Did they
Like,
stop allowing that?
They did. Yeah,
They did.
because people used it to exploit the file system and gain root. And then even
No
after
kidding.
they took it off, people still found the way to jailbreak it anyway and bring it back, which was
That's a
ridiculous.
known thing in security, and this is not something that I do, but I've seen it a lot, because I can't not be exposed to that. But the thinking is pretty much if you give somebody access to everything physically, if it's all there in front of them, they will break in. Period. That's the answer. They will break in. And so the idea of local security that they cannot break into is almost an alien concept. Like if I saw that, that would be really weird. And I think there are some. I think there are some secure things like previous console generations and stuff. I think there are things out there that people never really kind of broke into. And I don't know like the specific details about that. I just know that mostly you assume if they have physical access, they will break in. And that rabbit hole goes so deep, man. I mean, the ways that people will break into stuff. There's a guy that was at DevCon presenting a way to acid bath the top of a IC away and then to peel that back. And then there's like some kind of security mesh under there. And there was a way that he got by that. So he's not like software hacking something. He's fighting his way into the top of the chip, and then he wants to take pictures of the traces and understand how it works and how the security is. And he's able to literally like photograph the private keys that are hidden in the chip, like literally photograph them. And even at DevCon, even with all those people in there using, that audience that they have, this is back to my audience thing again. Even at DevCon with that audience, they were just like, dude, I have no idea what you're doing. I do not have acid baths at my house. I do not do any of the things that you do. And, so hot software hackers everywhere, just like, dude, I don't have no idea what to make of that presentation. And it's still used as a joke around people that I work with. They're always like, well, you didn't tell me somebody was going to show up with an acid bath. So anytime a security conversation happens and somebody breaks it through, these kind of jokes come up. So if you give somebody enough time and enough access, they will acid bath your stuff.
Makes sense.
I should send him one of these. Go to town, man. Rip it all apart.
Man,
there needs to be like a switchblade tear down, a switchblade through a paper shredder, all those things.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Jim. Right? Like I actually thought about doing like a minor teardown as well because I saw how cool it is that you actually left it so that people could actually change it technically if they wanted to. Yeah. And I think that's really cool that you did that because you don't see.
I'm so glad you brought it up because it was a really intentional decision. I had this Loctite here at my desk, and so every switchblade that exists was literally made on this piece of glass that right here. That's where it was put together. So just like this one exists right here, this is the last one I put together, and I almost put thread locker on it. Not really as a security thing. I mean, because that isn't that hard to get around, but I just didn't want it coming apart, like screws back out, And so I was going to like put a tad bit on there and I may have done that like on the very first few or something. So if somebody says I can't get my screws out, I changed my mind later and it was for Carlo. It was like, I'm just going to leave these screws. I'm going to let them take it all apart and then put them all back together again. And, if like, that's their thing, totally fine.
I just think
so. It was a decision. It was a decision, really, on one day. So it'd be like, no, I don't want to thread locker these things. And if you understand that there was like a functional thinking behind it, and also if you have one and you don't want to take it apart, you might want to put thread locker on it. But I didn't want to do that for anybody. I didn't want to take that away from them. I literally didn't want to take that away from Carlo.
What's really cool about this is that it's a hobby love project that you put love into, and you can see that from the design and the way that you made it. And I appreciate that you made something like this because it appeals to to people like me that love this kind of stuff. I grew up in the days of where I used to take my laptops apart and change the Wi-Fi cards and add different Wi-Fi stuff to it. So I mean, I love tinkering with stuff, and this is just really cool. And now you mentioned you have a USB-C one. You don't know how excited you just got me. I am dying.
Yeah, no, it's already going.
Dying
That's
for
mine.
a USB-C one, Jim.
That's mine. You can't
That's
have
hilarious.
it.
The funny thing is that this is literally the one. You know what I mean? So when he
Yeah.
has it, it will be this one. And so if you like look at like, oh, there's like a barcode type sticker on it. Yeah, this will be the one he has. And if you wanted the USB, A one, it would be this one. And so this is such a small project, and I want it to always be like that. And I don't ever want it to be anything other than that. And I want it to be the kind of thing that shows up like on eBay as like this is the Switchblade thing, like I don't want people to not sell it on eBay, by the way. I want that to be a thing. I want people to look at it like a little weird art project that kind of appeals to like somebody with kind of hacker sensibilities. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to be one. You don't need to be like into soldering and or into like cracking stuff with software or any of that stuff. It just needs to appeal to you. That's all. That's the only requirement. And so I want it to be an art project that appeals to somebody with like hacker kind of sensibilities, period. And then I want there to be like a fixed number of them, and then that'll be it. I don't ever want to do anything like more than that. Personally, I don't ever want to do anything more. It's kind of the like anti-vision to my career. This is not a big budget thing. This is not there's no publish. You know what I mean? It's like my version of an indie game. It's like my version of like my art project, period. That's all it is. It's just my art project. And it has all that to it. It doesn't have the feel of like, oh, this is what a team of people in a group decided to do. And by the way, that is a real like design kind of danger, is to like, what do people in a group in a room have to say about this, or what focus groups and that kind of stuff. People say weird stuff in focus groups, really weird, like stuff they would not ordinarily say. I have seen them. We do them. You know what I mean? People say really weird stuff. And I could take literally you guys into a focus group and you would tell me something different in there than you would, you know what I mean? Like out here.
Oh, I'll tell you right now.
Stuff happens.
Right now, I'm going to ask you, can you put peanut butter on it? See, that would be your focus group. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, somebody would be in the back going like, they want to know about peanut butter on the, and that's really how focus groups go down. And they have kind of an infamous reputation for good reason. People will say really weird things. And if that was your picture of reality, if that was your picture, that is not how we form pictures, by the way. This is how we do it, by talking to Carlo and going like, okay, I have an idea of what this is. Like I have an idea of what the Switchblade is for him, and I have an idea of what the Switchblade is for you. Like I can see that, and it's going to be a little different. And but I can see how it also crosses, and it's like I can get both of you in here. I can get you in here, and I can get you in here. And you might want
the one with the
aluminum
case
off, and you might want to put the aluminum back on. So it has standoffs. Let's see. So I'm going to show you really quick.
See, for me, the case kind of makes me feel like I'm not going to break it.
That's what it's supposed to feel like. It's supposed to feel like protection from you. That's the whole feel, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole feel should be like, okay, it seems kind of secure enough, like your opinion there. It should feel like, okay, it's going to be okay like this. And it should not be like freaking you out in any kind of way.
Like I'm not a tech guy.
I don't want to get, I don't want that feeling. And by the way, it gives me that feeling, like when I just look at it objectively as a thing, I'm like, that looks scary. That's my read on it. And I don't want to deliver that opinion. That's why I was kind of surprised where people were like, yeah, I want that one, without the aluminum. The truth is that when it comes with aluminum, I'm just putting one together really fast. When it comes with the aluminum, it's going to have these little standoffs. So nothing about what's there really changes. Hold on.
Hey, see, I'm going to say I want one of each. I want all four. All four.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Poor Mav. He doesn't even have one.
I don't even have one. I held off for you guys to get them.
Yeah, that's true.
So true. I mean, it can only go to so many people. It can only go to so many people.
Yeah.
So it'll be like this. Can you see the standoffs on there?
Yep.
Yeah.
See those little guys on the top?
Yeah.
They actually just go. I can't make it focus. They go straight into the pillars that are there, and they just open up more screws on the top. So now, once the aluminum was there, a little tiny screw goes onto that standoff and then holds the aluminum kind of up above it. And it'll feel really solid. It'll feel like, okay, that's protecting it. It's not a case, it's a shield. You had the word right, at the beginning there. You're like, that looks like a shield. That doesn't look like a case. I don't ever want it to feel like a case. I wish I had my Western Digital up here. I have that SSD that they make. They make an external SSD thing. And it's like, that's my anti-vision. I don't want that thing. I don't want to make a case. That's already
be
a thing.
honest-
It's already a product. You can already get that. And it has a cable, you know, and you open it up and you're like, oh, it's USB micro, which I hate. And it's like, so you're jamming it in the USB micro hole and the whole thing just feels bad.
Yeah.
And there's an
And
elegance
Husk has
to
one?
just, yeah, he does. I wrote the word husk on the top of his.
All
The
my
funny thing
friends
is,
have one,
when I-
man. What's
yeah,
going on?
when I've been able to, I've been addressing them using their Twitter handles, you know, like
Yeah.
when I ask for addresses and stuff like that. Obviously I can't do that on eBay, but like when I have both, I just put their Twitter handle on the package. So when Husk got it, it's his address and then it just says HUSK on the
Oh,
top,
that's awesome.
all in caps.
Yeah.
And so he got it that way. And it's like, that's cool. All that stuff's intentional. Like I'm doing everything I can at every single point
Yeah.
I can to kind of like make this a compelling thing for literally you. You know what I mean? Like it's supposed to appeal to you. That's the whole design of it. And so if you were early on, we're like, that's so I take that feedback. That's cool. That looks like a shield. That's my opinion of it. You know what I mean? That's my read on it. That looks like it has a shield. And I'm like, okay, got that right. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like I might change the finishes, but it felt like a shield to him. So I got that right. And that part of it was really intentional. And I don't want it to feel like a case. I don't want ever like someone to use that word. And if they ask, wait, what if I pour a liquid onto this? I want them to ask that. I would say, yes, that would fry it. If it's plugged in, it's dead. Like you will never, ever recover it. Completely, that is a problem. I want people to have that question because then I've got it. Then I've got, okay, they understand it's a shield. They understand it does not protect them against pouring liquid on. You know, I want them to go down that path and explore. Like, is this really enough? And I want them to kind of come to the conclusion, yeah, this is good. This is a healthy amount of like protection and open, you know, like that's such a good balance when you get that right. And like, you know, Unix was mentioned earlier. When an OS gets that right, it feels good. You know, it's like, oh, they did the right things here. It's like you can kind of like take its case off, if you will, and like get into the internals. But if you don't want to, it kind of works as like a standalone thing. And other platforms are just closed. You know, there's no opportunity to really get on there and do any kind of like meaningful your own work. You know, you're just on that platform in that ecosystem and everything is like shielded out from you. And that's just not a compelling thing for me. I have no problem with those platforms. I have no problem with people making stuff for those platforms. I just want this other kind of feel. You know, that's not what I'm going for.
Would a USB-C adapter slow it down? Like if I was to
Yeah,
put
such
one.
a good question. Such a good question. I'm going to tell you the answer. I have one. For those of you who don't know what he's asking, this is a USB-C adapter. And I found this on Amazon. This is just something I searched for. And if you look inside both the Switchblade and this adapter and your plug, if it's blue, that's USB 3.0. That's what the blue means. It really does mean that. That's not just a convention of motherboard manufacturers or anything like that. Blue is 3.0. So 3.0 thing, 3.0 adapter should be exactly the same speed. This is just terrible looking. So I would not recommend anyone do that. It feels like it's gonna, you know, you're gonna brush up against it and just rip the whole thing apart. But yeah, it should work if it's all USB 3.0. Also, if you wanted to put one on an extension, you know, like cable, if it's blue in there, then it's 3.0. If it's not blue in there, it's not 3.0. And there's lots of other things that can go wrong if you like look at an enclosure drive and you're like, well, why isn't it fast? I've got like this USB, it's blue on both sides, and it's still not as fast as I expect. There's other things that can go wrong once you get inside the case. I'm telling you, when you have something raw as this raw, you know, this is SSD with the minimal amount of hardware to get it onto a USB bus, minimal. And it has dedicated hardware on that thing below it, and it's a chip that only does that thing. It moves SATA to USB. That's all the chip does, and it's good at that, and it doesn't get overwhelmingly hot. And but back to the shield thing, the whole thing does kind of get hot, and that's the whole point of the thing, is to keep you off it and to kind of keep the shield cool.
Cool.
I'm so glad to hear your read on it. This is such good, like, solid feedback. You can tell me criticisms too, but like these are all the things I really wanted you to think and feel like when you got it, and I'm just really happy.
You know,
Really
to be
happy.
to be honest with you, like I thought about, once you start selling these, I guess you mentioned eBay is one place. Um
Probably, yeah.
I was gonna get like maybe a bigger model, like a bigger size model, and then
Right.
put this like in a frame and hang it up because
It's exactly what I wanted.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
it's exactly what I
I'm
wanted.
really proud of this. I think this is really cool. It really speaks to me. Like it really does. And I'm sure Redpool feels the same way, and I'm sure Mav with that case feels the same way. I think this thing can speak to everybody. And I'm not just saying that because you sent me one, to
Yeah.
give
No, I know.
impressions. I'm saying this because as a person who loves technology, that I really love what you've designed. Like it's just it's just so cool. You don't see a manufacturer out there these days do something this simplistic but works so well. You see them lock every single thing down, and they lock it down
Right.
with all different torque screws and everything else. So most people don't even have it at their house if they want to, like, change it out, which is ridiculous to me because I like opening stuff up.
Yeah, I feel
So
like we
Yeah.
factored out the tinkerer. You know what I mean? Like that's gotten like pushed out of everything that exists. There's like hardly anything I own that I feel comfortable at this point breaking into. Like just getting in there with my screw set and just pulling it all apart. We've kind of lost that as a thing. It's like we've lost kind of like this maker community, this idea of like, hey, from one hacker to another, and like maker to, sorry, I didn't say hacker, from one maker to another. This isn't like my thing. That's all it is. And it's supposed to appeal to another maker. That's who the audience is. The audience is another maker, period. And they're supposed to go like, that's cool. That very exact thing. That checks all my boxes for a thing. It has the right amount of shielding. It's the kind of the right size. It does the thing well. That checks all my boxes. And that's all it's supposed to do. And there's a lot of other things I'm doing. Like you don't know this, but not everybody, but most people got different NAND chips on the top. So there are only so many manufacturers out there, but those manufacturers have them, put on the actual board by somebody else. And there's a lot of those out there. And so there's a lot of people that will take mass manufactured NAND and put it on a board. And I'm trying to test out all the
You want to show them?
options. Like I'm trying to check out like, does this one fail? Is this one reliable? Is this one run too hot? There's all these differences. And so I've been sending out different NAND to people, and I write down their numbers and I write down the NAND that they have. I know the one you have, you don't know the one you have, but I keep track of all that stuff. And so if somebody has a report like, it failed, it stopped working, then I can just go to that NAND and be like, okay, that one's not good, that kind of stuff. So I'm testing. There's reasons that people have them for free, like it's not a drawing or a giveaway type of thing. It's not for publicity. Although I appreciate it, it's to test. I was like, I can't physically test 9 different NAND chips on my own, and so it's just this massive QA project, really similar to that origin story of like Ultima, Ultima Online, of like going back to people kind of paying a little bit to be in the beta, that whole thing that appeals to like a weird kind of percentage of the audience of like, yeah, I'll pay to have a disc shipped to me. But other people will be like, yeah, I'd totally be up for that, and so it has like a audience that it's going after, and it's really different than any of the mass produced things. And to Carlos' point, it's like this appeals to me as a maker is a very different statement to, yeah, I can totally see how a large audience would want this. I hope you don't think that of this, not for a
Okay.
large audience.
This is where we interrupt the schedules program for my little maker. My maker made this, and she wants to show. Oh, here, let's.
Oh
do
my,
right
keep it in
front of
your
Oh,
closer.
now I this,
Hi.
there we go. There we go. She made this little
That's
Christmas tree.
awesome. What's the snow made
It's
up?
what is that? I forgot what it's even called. It's
Pine cone.
it's a pine cone.
Oh, it's a pine
it's-
cone.
Yeah, it's a pine cone, but it's got a little pot here, And what the heck is it called?
Yeah, it has the look of a live tree, right?
Yeah,
Like in a pot and everything.
Yes, and it's what the heck? It's not glitter. It's I'm drawing a blank on what it's called.
It's totally glitter. That's what it is.
It's like glitter, but it's the bigger
More in front of
things that you sew it on.
Oh, you do?
It's not. Yeah, it's not like not rhinestones. It's the other stuff.
The bejeweled
Oh, I can
sequence.
see them now. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. They have a hole in them.
Yeah, sequence.
Sequence.
So this is where she likes to interrupt everybody and say hello.
That's awesome.
And show off.
I love
stuff.
it.
Last one, she showed off her artwork. You want to show that too while you're here? We'll get this over with. She made, of course, it's not going to show.
Oh.
Yeah, you'd have
There
to
we
turn
go.
that off, I think.
Yeah, give me a second here.
It's a magic picture.
Yeah, it is. Video settings.
That's
It's
an
not at all
up and coming
lame,
artist
right?
right there. One artist talking to another.
There you go.
Oh, wow. That's
it is
actually really cool.
A Greek vase. They were learning about ancient Greece, and they
Wow.
did. It's a cat with the vase. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's
we
awesome.
try to do little things to help her, grow in every way she can and in her interest. So she's doing art. She does mechanical stuff. I'll work on the car. She'll come out there and help me with the car.
Oh, cool.
So, a rounded gamer. Yeah.
Sometimes we clean the car.
Yes, sometimes we clean the car. All right, can you say bye now?
Bye.
All right, guys, I'm gonna have to get some dinner and stuff. Are there any one last kind of burning questions things? It can be anything. I don't care if it's gaming related or Switchblade related, anything.
Let's see. Quick one. What's your favorite console of all time? I'm going to guess PS2.
Super Nintendo.
Dreamcast.
Favorite console. I'm gonna say PS2 just because it was so weird. That'll be the final answer. It was weird, really weird.
It could be a PS2. There's nothing weird about it.
Even in retrospect, you look back and you're like, at the time you're like, what are they thinking? You know what I mean? As a developer, you're just getting the documentation for it and stuff. And man, it was really cryptic. And so we're getting the documentation on how to use it. And it's just dude, what are you guys thinking? What the hell? And, so we're doing all the things that the documentation says to do. And now even in retrospect, later you look back and you're like, what the hell was that? Why did we do that weird thing? And I love it just for that. In retrospect, it looks so good. Kind of like him saying he wants to put it up on the wall and frame it, because whatever, it's just this weird thing. And that's how I have the PS2. I just want to literally the emotion trip or whatever. I want that on my wall, behind me. It's somebody at one point thought this was the right thing to do.
Well, it was. It brought us to the next steps.
It did what it did. You know what I mean? Is it left the PS1 land and it got us to the PS3 land. So by definition, it did its job. You know what I mean? There is a PS3. There was a PS2. You know what I mean? It has its place in history. It's it'd be like saying that a building, it didn't do a job. You know what I mean? It's almost critiquing architecture. It's yeah, say what you will. It's still here. You know what I mean? Before everything else, it was designed to still be here and you're still talking about it. So, it's good. And I'm really, if you haven't already realized this, I'm really hyper functional, in that kind of aesthetic stuff. I believe a hyper functional looks good. You want examples of that? Look around my life. You know what I mean? There's a cafe racer down there and it's just all ripped apart, bare naked motorcycle. And I like that look. I like the look of, or feel even, of function, just function, period. That's all. And that's in the Switchblade aesthetic. And, that is somewhat in the PS2's execution also. Just very functional at the time and the era that it lived in. It was a really kind of interesting take on, what should a console be? And no one can say different. You can't look at that honestly and say, that wasn't at least interesting, in terms of like, what could a console possibly be? And then some, different ideas happen, and it's like, okay, that was weird, but it was a thing. That was a real thing that we had. So that's my favorite. Any
Cool,
more before I cut?
I'm looking through.
Can I come back?
Oh, absolutely.
I hope so. I hope so.
Pass the
Yeah.
test and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so being on it's not something I usually do, but obviously there's like a reason that the audience is like really important to me right now. And oddly, it's not the Switchblade. That just ended up, we had this schedule before you had a Switchblade. I want everyone to know that. Like, it got here right just like recently, right? A week ago or something. Yeah. So so the reason that I'm kind of like really interested in engaging with an audience kind of outside of what I would normally hit or outside of who I already talked to is for reasons. We haven't really gone into them, but they were in that interview there somewhere. And then another thing is that I have this weird art project that I'm also working on, and then we got to talk about too. But there's a real like solid reason that I'm really into engaging with the audience. And you can make up whatever you want about that. It isn't to figure you out. It isn't to do demographic research. It isn't to kind of come up with another kind of persona that we don't have. It's none of those things. It is what I think is going to be the ultimate story of gaming. And my, like, if you look at the whole thing, like your beginning of your career to your end of your career, do you have an idea of how it's all going to end up in the end? I do have an idea of how it's all going to turn out. I have a picture of it. I have a picture of how it's all going to turn out. And we didn't talk about that, but I want you to understand that there's a reason that I'm here. A reason I'm talking kind of to your audience is because I have a picture of what I think the future is, and it involves them. So it involves literally you guys, and then it involves whoever's listening to this. Those will be the very first people that I would call the first early adopters of the future. I'm trying to find the early adopters of a future that I see coming. And I can't fully articulate the whole thing for you. I mean, I can, but I won't. I see a future coming. I know who the early adopters are, and I'm finding them. I want everyone to understand that. That is why I'm here. That is what I'm doing. It's not to sell Switchblades. It's not to do any kind of PR for anyone. I have an idea of what the future is, and it involves kind of you. It involves
That's
like
cool, man.
Yeah. So you just have to take my word for that right now. The way that this plays out will become, I think, a little more obvious the further we get down the road. You know what I mean? Like if we talk again in a year or something like that, I think the way this plays out will be a little bit more clear. At the beginning, it'll be like, that was weird. This developer showed up and talked to us. You know what I mean? Like, I have no idea why he came, but he came. There's a reason. There's a whole kind of way that I think this is going to probably play out. And it dramatically involves the audience. Now, just imagine that you were like at a network and I told you that, before YouTube. It's just at ABC. And I was like, guys, there's a whole future and it involves them. And they're like, the people in the seats? And yeah, the people on the other side of the screen. I know it's weird, but it's going to involve them. Like, it's really going to heavily involve them. Like, imagine you knew all that you knew right now. We're on YouTube. You know what I mean? We're streaming right now. So imagine you knew all that you knew and you had to go back and tell people about that. It would not go over particularly well, and you'd be like, I can't fully articulate how or everything, but like, it's going to totally involve the audience in the future. Like, you can participate or not, but there's going to be a whole thing and it's going to involve all of them. And so I don't think like all of gaming is going to be about this, but I think there's a very, very big part of our future that involves the audience. And that's a weird thing to tell somebody that produces entertainment. It would be like telling a concert pianist, like, you're going to do like the first act and the second act. And for the third act, the audience is all going to stand up and start performing. And what? That's not what I thought was going to happen. And that is what's going to happen. The third act is that the audience is going to be performing. It's that weird.
Jim, you got some comments in the chat already. You have
I can't say anymore.
You have two from Avish. One, he has a question before his comment. His question is, what's on the plate for dinner, Jim? That was his first question.
I actually don't know. I can hear it happening, but I don't know.
He doesn't know, Avish. Avish's second thing is a comment, and he says, this is why I like this guy.
So, is there any, like a picture or something?
I think
Uh,
he's
just-
talking about what you were saying.
just-
Oh, that whole
yeah.
spiel. That whole
Yeah.
spiel.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, they would have waited a really long time to hear that, and so at some level, I'm trying to kind of talk about something that I want to talk a lot about, but I understand that there's only going to be kind of like a certain appetite for consuming it. So I'm trying to tell you the right amount, and it's a tough thing to guess about, but I think I've got it right. I think that that little bit is all I want to really say about it for right now, and I want that to be something that is for this audience, and then to kind of like hold on to until I come back to them again. And yeah, that's really it. For
You
right
know,
now.
Thank you
We're-
for all of that insight, man.
Yeah.
It's been awesome.
This is the place that it would happen. You know what I mean? Like if you go back and look at like where was like computing happening, and it's like you go to like hackathons or fairs and maker fairs and things like that, like where people have boards and stuff, you know, tables and that kind of era. We live in that kind of era. It's just, it doesn't look like that anymore. It doesn't look like card tables and boards, except when it does, like a switchblade. But like for the most part, where we are right now is not like something that can be shown in a convention center between booths. It's just not like that. It just isn't like that.
Yeah.
It would be like saying you were going to go to a convention and learn about YouTube. It would be like that.
you know,
And
it's
you but no, that's
you're
not
flashing-
how I'm going to. Yeah.
You're flashing me back to the conventions. You know, seeing VR for the first time, and
That's
people,
how it
you know,
happens. I bet you
putting
were
it all
one of the
together.
first ones out there.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That was me.
See, I'm literally tried to find who is going to be the first person. Like if this future is going to happen, if it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's coming, who does it first start to intersect with? Because things don't just show up. They start to arrive, and the closer you are to the thing actually happening, the more you see that that's kind of the way that it happens. Things happen slowly, and then they happen fast. That's the way that they happen.
like
They
in
happen
all
slowly, and then they happen fast.
like an all digital future.
Kind of like I'm going to give you a composer. So I'm going to tell this quick story, and you're just going to have to understand that I'm answering your question. This guy, Olafur Arnalds, it's Icelandic.
Okay.
He has a song. Oh, dude, I can't say all these Icelandic words. I'm just going to Twitter this out really fast. Give me a second. Okay, so I'm just going to send the link, and the link has all the who did what that I'm sending you out. This is a composer from Iceland, and he had the idea to do this really interesting way of releasing his music, where he did 7 songs in 7 days on Twitter. Actually, he did. I'm just sending the blind link out. He did 7 songs in 7 days, and he asked his audience, okay, you with me? He asked his audience, I want you to send me an imagery that you think goes with this song. So he did 7 songs in 7 days, plus a request from the audience. And he said, I want you to send in pictures that you think go with this. Then he released his album, right? So the actual thing, not the Twitter release thing. And it comes with a vinyl record and this book, Found Songs. So that's the album you're looking at, Found Songs. And the book has these images in it that were submitted by the users. These are all user pictures in his booklet, right? And you think that's cool. The story doesn't end there. Somebody in his audience was a VFX person, and they said, I know what that song makes me think of, and I can't do it in a picture. So he did a motion kind of graphics thing using Houdini and sent it to the composer. And he was like, that's the video. And so the link I sent you is actually the VFX artist page, not the Icelandic guy. This is somebody, where is he? Sorry, I need to look at this while I talk about it. I want to give this guy his credit. His name is Esteban. And Esteban, thought he said what country he was in on here. I don't want to like say things that he's not publishing. Yeah. So if you can find it, he does not live in Iceland. He's from across the world. He sent in the video. They made that the video for the song. And that video has more popularity than the song ever did. Got all that?
Yep.
The audience made the book, which then made the video. And I don't know what part I'm the most impressed with. That the artist did that the artist created the book, that the artist created the video, or that somehow we live in a world where all three of those things happened. I don't know
So
which
it's
thing
a
I'm more impressed with.
collaboration born on inspiration.
Exactly right. It's exactly right. It's a collaboration born on inspiration. And if you could package that up and say that that is the future of interactive entertainment, you would have the future of interactive entertainment, period. You would have it. If you could get that in your future, then you've said it. And that's why I was kind of telling that story, is because it illustrates where this is all going, how it's all going to turn out. This is unusual and weird and not normal. It's not going to be. It'll be like stories like that. And for those who found that kind of inspiring, to those who watch the video and know in their DNA that it's not like other things. When you watch the video and you listen to the sound, you know it's not like other things. I know because I found that video and I was like, this is not like other things. How the hell did this happen? And I had to go through the whole footwork. I'm like, there's the official page for that video, which I did not send you. And then there's the guy who did it, which I did send you. And I found that. And this is after finding it on YouTube and chasing it all the way over there. And so I found the guy, and then I was like, what the hell is the story here? And if you Google the right things, you'll find out that he is a fan that submitted the thing, that the Icelandic guy was like, that's totally the video. And now that video, how many does that one guy have on there? 1.6 million? I think that was on there, right? Yeah, 1.6 million. That guy, the VFX artist, that link, the one I sent, has 1.6 million views. Just that guy. I'm not talking about the total video, views or anything like that. That guy has 1.6 million views on his weird CG video for an obscure Icelandic composer. Got all that? Yeah. So what if it wasn't just a weird experiment over there on the side? What if it was with a franchise that, what if it's a console is your access? What if it's a world that you're really engaged with? What if you have some ability to create in that world? And what if other people had a way to experience what you created? If you got all that, then that's pretty much where it's all going.
Sounds really cool, man.
It does. It sounds really exciting.
So the future I want to see is playing like some kind of sequence in a game where somebody like this could contribute their music, right? So I want to experience this Icelandic composer in a game, in a world that he made just for that world. You know what I mean? Not reusing his track. He made it to go in that world. I want a future where it's compelling enough for that guy to decide to put his song in that game. And if you followed all that, you understand he would be up for that. You know what I mean? Like, this guy might do that. He's not like some obscure, like really big pop star thing, right? It's like that. Yeah, that guy might do that. I want it to be believable. I want it to like you to accept my premise and kind of put it to the test and be like, will that guy actually do that? Yeah, I think he would. I think that guy would actually do that. And if you're still off on the, like, if you give creators access, they will just draw weird pictures. You're just off on a weird tangent. It's like we're way beyond that. We're not about like the strange things that people are going to do on day one and the weird drawings that you're going to get back. Way past that. We're like, what if somebody is kind of dungeon mastering this whole thing out there? I don't know who, but out there. And in that dungeon mastering of this whole thing, they're yanking stuff like this in, like giving this guy the right tools, getting the stuff back, putting it all in like you edit in Premiere, like you put stuff together just like that. I'm going to put this track with that, with this person's animation. And I'm going to reuse some of the other stuff the publisher gave me because we do that now. You know what I mean? Like there's a place where you get the files. And if you know what to do with those files, then you have like this thing. And it's this user participate. So if you talk to somebody that plays in Minecraft, they will tell you the sentence. And I want you to listen to every word of it. Sometimes I'm playing in a world and sometimes I'm creating a world. They will tell you that sentence. Anyone that has been in there long enough will say that. Sometimes I'm playing it and sometimes I'm creating in it. And if somebody said, well, is it a tool or is it something you play? It's like, well, sometimes I'm playing it and sometimes I'm creating in it. They have to keep going back over that. Sometimes I'm playing with it. Sometimes I'm creating. If you can get that ingrained enough in your in the back of your head, that is a different future than the one we have now.
To a lot of people, creating is playing also.
I totally agree. I completely agree. But it's also,
Yeah.
it starts to be like the music that you think should be with what you're doing. You know what I
Right.
mean? You're always
Mhm.
writing your own thing. You're writing your own story literally by playing. It's what is being sold is the experience that you have. It's not the experience that somebody designed for you, really. It's a game they designed for you. What's yours is the experience that you had in there. And Carlo's articulation of that earlier with the snow and Battlefront and the way it felt and the way it sounded at that moment, that's his experience, you know? And so it's kind of the reason I don't really agree with like reviewing things. It's because it's like, I don't really want to know what it's like from some just overall perspective. I just want to know what your experience is. That's all that I care about. I don't care what you think other people will think of this, you know, like who would care about that? And so I don't want to know what Carlo thinks somebody else would think about a Switchblade. He'd give me very different feedback. You know what I mean? He'd say, no, you are not on the right track. The world does not want that. And I'm, yeah, do you though? Yeah, I do, but I'm not like them. That's what Carlo would tell me. You know, like I like this as a maker and as it appeals to my things. It doesn't appeal to everybody's things. And so there will be different layers of participation. There will be ways to participate in it kind of that's easy to access. And then there'll be layers of participation that involve like, hey, Icelandic composer guy, meh, you like this, you know, over here for your thing? And I could see him doing it. I really could. When I hear that story and I see the guy and I've watched everything and I look at that guy's VFX site and I see the whole way that it happened and he's done, this is 10 years in history, by the way, this 11-year-old story. It's an 11-year-old story that is interesting right now. Yeah, it didn't get told for like 11 years and now it's being told.
Wow.
Awesome.
Called The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly. And Kevin Kelly is the editor-in-chief for Wired. And if you don't think that guy has a really solid understanding of what is happening and what is coming, look at his history. He has a whole history of like scary predictions of like spotting things that are kind of headed our direction. Predictions get really kind of like specific, and it's like somebody saying the day that like AR will be in our everyday, you know, like, you know, self-driving cars, the day we have self-driving cars, that's a prediction. Self-driving cars in our future, that's a different prediction. That's like it's coming. I can totally see how it's coming. It's that kind of thing. And his whole book is called that. It's called The Inevitable. And it's about the future and it's about his point of view. And it's really good.
Cool, man.
With that, I have to go to dinner.
Yeah, no, I completely understand.
No,
Jim,
no.
first of all, I want to thank you for spending this much time with us. This was an amazing interview. I really appreciate it. You are an amazing guy, and the Switchblade is an amazing thing that you created. You know, I have the impression that you're a genius, whether you agree with me or not. I think you're a genius. And I want to thank you for your time coming on here and talking to us about the industry, the stuff that you do, and we definitely hope that you come back in the future.
Yeah, cool, man. Thanks so much for having me on. Thank you, Marv. Thank you, Dipple. I really glad that I got to be here. Glad to have had your audience. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone that spent the time. And if anything on here kind of clicked with you or you want to talk or whatever, I'm very much available on Twitter and, you know, all the places. So this was really good. I'm somebody that kind of spends their life doing experiments, right? And this is an experiment. This is one of those things. There's kind of a lot of things that I think are coming, and they're reflected in what I choose to say, what I choose to show you, what I choose to kind of, you know, it's all like based on something that I really think is kind of coming or about to happen. And so I hope you got that read on things, and I hope it landed with you guys, and I hope it landed with your audience. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Jim.
no, we thank you. I mean, we even have a comment right away. This was an amazing experience, guys. That's from
That's a good
Avish.
comment.
So yet
That's a good
again,
comment.
so we thank
I
you.
don't want it to be about like, I agreed with all that or I disagreed with all that or any kind of weird commentary like that. This is an amazing experience would be the kind of thing that I'd want somebody to say after they, you know what I mean? Like that's the wording I would want. That's exactly right. And I would want that meaning like that's that I want people to say that there were parts that had landed with me. There were parts that didn't. There are parts I don't fully kind of track him. I want all those things to happen, and I want them to summarize it with like, it was a decent experience. I want that to be your takeaway. And if you're willing to go with me on it was a decent experience, then we're a little bit more forward than we were a few hours ago.
Yeah.
Future happens slow, and then it happens fast. Cheers.
All right, thanks, Jim.
All right. Thank you. You have a good one.
He's already gone.